Okay, I am calling this special meeting of council to order. First, I'd like to acknowledge that this meeting is taking place on the traditional territory of the Sanawas First Nation. First item on the agenda is adoption of the agenda. I'll simply make the motion that the July 27th, 2022 special council meeting agenda be adopted with additional information for items 3A, 3B, and 3C. Second by Councillor Gusselbrock. Any discussion on the agenda? Okay, hearing or seeing none, I will move to calling the question. All those in favor and opposed, that's carried unanimously. All right. So at this point, we'll be moving into the statutory public hearings. So under 3A of our agenda, we have the District of Lantzville Official Community Plan Bylaw number 150-2019 Amendment, Foothills Special Area Plan Bylaw number 279-2021, and District of Lantzville Zoning Bylaw number 180-2020 Amendment, Foothills Comprehensive Development Zone Bylaw number 280-2021. Notice that public hearing was given or posted on July 13th, 2022, and here we are this evening. So I'm going to be moving into the public hearing. Just got to change scripts. Good evening, and on behalf of council, I would like to welcome everyone watching the live stream, participating in the public hearing remotely via Zoom and in the council chamber. This public hearing is being conducted by electronic means pursuant to the Local Government Act, Community Charter, and the Council Procedure Bylaw for the purpose of council to receive and consider input from all persons who believe that their interest in property is affected by the following proposed bylaws. Agenda item 3A is the District of Lantzville Official Community Plan Bylaw number 150-2019 Amendment, Foothills Special Area Plan Bylaw number 279-2021, and District of Lantzville Zoning Bylaw number 180-2020 Amendment, Foothills Comprehensive Development Zone Bylaw number 280-2021. And agenda item 3B, District of Lantzville Official Community Plan Bylaw number 150-2019 Amendment 6701 Harwood Drive Bylaw number 315-2022, and District of Lantzville Zoning Bylaw number 180-2020 Amendment 6701 Harwood Drive Bylaw number 61-2022. And agenda items 3C, District of Lantzville Official Community Plan Bylaw number 150-2019 Amendment 6717 Harwood Drive Bylaw 317-2022, and District of Lantzville Zoning Bylaw number 180-2020 Amendment 6717 Harwood Drive Bylaw number 318-2022. We have adapted our public hearing procedures tonight to facilitate remote and in-person participation. The council chamber at Municipal Hall is located at 7192 Lantzville Road and is open with limited seating for members of the public who do not have the ability to connect to the public hearing electronically, so you can attend in person to watch and hear and ensure you have an opportunity to be heard. If you wish to speak and have not yet registered, we ask that you register now, specifying each agenda item that you wish to speak to. For those who are watching via our live stream, please note that you can still join the Zoom webinar to speak to the proposed bylaws under agenda item 3 on tonight's agenda by going to lantzville.ca, clicking on July 27th in the calendar, click view details, and follow the instructions to register in the Zoom webinar link provided. The purpose of these hearings are to provide an opportunity for council to receive and consider input from persons who believe that their interest in property is affected by proposed bylaws. It is not an opportunity to debate the merits of the proposed bylaws with either council members, staff, or members of the audience who may be opposed to your particular view, nor is it an opportunity for members of the public to ask questions about the proposed bylaw or bylaws. Those in the gallery, please refrain from talking, turn off your phones, and clapping will not be permitted so everyone has an opportunity to hear, and no one is discouraged from speaking. As the chair, I ask that you restrict your comments to the proposed bylaws and be as brief and concise as possible. Council members may, if they wish, ask questions of you following your presentation. However, the main function of council during these hearings is to listen to the views of the public. It is not the function of council to debate the merits of the proposed bylaws with individual citizens. Those in the council chamber who wish to speak can register by signing the first opportunity speakers list for the applicable proposed bylaws for each agenda item located at the table at the entrance to the council chamber. Those who have pre-registered via Zoom will be given first opportunity to speak, and then those registered in the council chambers. All speakers lists will be managed by staff in person from the council chamber. Speakers participating via Zoom must remain muted until your name is called, and muted again once you have concluded your remarks. Please do not hang up or leave the webinar if you wish to speak again or for the hearings following. Once the first opportunity speakers list has been exhausted, I will call for a second and third and fourth time speakers who have new information to present and wish to speak again. Remote participants, please use the Zoom raise hand feature to indicate that you would like to speak again. This function can be found in your webinar controls. If you are participating by telephone, the raise hand function can be activated by pressing *9 on your keypad. Speakers in the council chambers must assign the additional opportunity speakers list for each agenda item. I am asking speakers to respect a 3-minute time limit for each turn in order that everyone who wishes to speak is able to do so. Speakers may speak more than once if they are providing new or additional information. Following closure of each hearing, council must not receive further submissions or correspondence from the public concerning the proposed bylaws. Should you wish clarification on any specific issues regarding a project after this evening, please direct your inquiries to district staff. Immediately following the close of tonight's last public hearing, the special council meeting will continue with the agenda order so that council may consider the third reading of each proposed bylaw. I will now proceed to the public hearing for agenda item 3A. This public hearing is being convened in order to consider proposed District of Lantzville official community bylaw number 150-2019 amendment Foothills Special Area Plan bylaw number 279-2021 and District of Lantzville zoning bylaw number 180-2020 amendment Foothills Comprehensive Development Zone bylaw number 280-2021. Sorry, my pages have stuck together. During the public hearing, any persons in attendance who believes that their interests in property is affected by proposed bylaws 279 and 280 shall be given an opportunity to be heard on the matters contained in the proposed bylaws. However, it is important that all who speak at this hearing restrict their remarks to matters contained in the bylaws. Those of you who have registered to speak concerning the proposed bylaws should, at the appropriate time after your name is being called to speak, begin your comments by clearly stating your name and civic address. After this hearing has concluded, council may, without further notice, give whatever effect council believes proper to the representations made at this hearing. I will now call on the Director of Planning and Community Services, Mr. Frank Limshoe, to introduce the proposed bylaws. Through to you, Director Limshoe.
Thank you, Your Worship. Can you guys hear me in the council chambers?
If you can maybe just move your microphone a little bit closer.
How's that?
That's better.
Okay. I'm just going to share my screen, so just bear with me for 2 seconds. Can everybody see the two maps on their screen?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. So as indicated, the public hearing tonight is to consider an official community plan and zoning bylaw amendment application to amend the existing Foothills Comprehensive Development Plan area plan and the Foothills Comprehensive Development Zone. The proposed amended bylaws will replace the current OCP and zoning bylaws for the subject lands. So briefly, the subject lands were zoned back in 2007 to allow for a master plan residential community. Many folks refer to it as Foothills Development. In 2014, the district entered into a memorandum of understanding, MOU, with the property owner, Lone Tree Properties Limited. And while the MOU is not binding, it does provide an outline of the general accepted principles between the District of Lantzville and Lone Tree for replacing the existing development agreement with a phased development agreement. So it's been 8 years since the execution of the MOU. The property owners have submitted development application to amend both the official community plan and the zoning bylaw to renew the vision for Foothills as a more sustainable project that aligns more closely with the current official community plan. To date, approximately 102 single-family lots have been created, and the district has received approximately 291 hectares or 720 acres of parkland. The proposed, the proposed OCP amendment and zoning will allow for a new total of 814 residential units and 5,000 square meters of commercial use. This is an increase of 84 units from the original 730 units that was approved under the existing zoning. The proposals for a comprehensive development that includes 3 distinct neighborhoods, each with their own mix of residential and non-residential uses, building typologies, park green spaces, and lands for community use. The biggest change from the previous plan, you'll notice it when I compared it to zoning bylaws in front of, or zoning maps in front of you, is that under the existing zoning, which is to your left, you'll notice that the map outlines 4 areas: areas 1, 2, 3, and 4. And within those areas, there are permitted uses. The primary use in area 1 is really residential. Area 2 allows for a village center. Area 3 allows for rural type of residential development. And then area 4 is effectively the parkland that ultimately will be dedicated to the district of Lantzville. With respect to area 3, the rural area, you'll notice that there are these 2 sort of clusters right in the center of what is to be the park area for the district. With respect to the amended bylaws that are being put forward, the applicants or property owners have shifted the units from the center of the park to the lands to the east. Effectively, what this does is it reduces the amount of lands and footprint taken up by actual development, and results in, at the end of the day, a more contiguous park area for the district. So all this area in light gray, if you're looking at the map to the right, is all now park area, as opposed to having potential for residential development sort of in the center. I should also indicate that through the MOU process, the additional 84 units was discussed and agreed to as part of that. So the additional units is not something new. It's something that's been discussed between the district and the applicants for a while now. In terms of meeting some of the goals of the official community plan, this project will, as it was originally conceived, provide for a variety of housing types: single-family lots, duplexes, row housing, townhousing, apartments, and so forth. It'll also provide a small commercial center to service the daily needs of the residents and visitors to the area. Infrastructure for the site, the development is predicated on the provision of community water and community sewer. Unlike the previous iteration, where allowed for some rural development that would be serviced by on-site well and septic, the revised plan is basically proposing that all residential development be connected to community water, community sewer. With respect to the special area plan, there are basically 3 designations that have been identified in this revised OCP amendment. The first would be the uplands residential, which allows for a mix of low impact, medium single family lots with selected pockets of semi-detached homes located to avoid steep slopes and reduce the impacts on the natural hillside. The second designation would be the foothills residential. So these are areas of compact and walkable residential uses, which include smaller lots, both detached and attached units bare land strata, focused on ground-oriented building forms, with some apartments and some mixed use. And then the third general designation are what has been identified as neighborhood centers. So there's the Village Center, the Quarry Service Center, and the Hecla Creek Neighborhood Center. And what this proposed amendment does is it refines what was previously conceived under the original OCP and zoning designations. With respect to the comprehensive development zone that's being proposed, the new zone divides the foothill into effectively 5 sub-areas, plus the existing development lands. And the uses are identified within the bylaw for each of those sub-areas. Under this zoning, the total build-out density, as I indicated, will be for a maximum of 814 residential units, with up to 5,000 square meters of non-residential use. And as indicated, this is an increase of approximately 84 residential units over what is currently approved at 730. In accordance with the official community plan and the MOU, a phase development agreement will be prepared for council's consideration. The phase development agreement will provide certainty to the district and the owners requiring the rezoning for servicing provisions. Effectively, it locks in the provisions for infrastructure, services, and amenities for the term of the phase development agreement. A separate report with the proposed phase development agreement will come to council at a future council meeting for consideration. Generally speaking, with respect to the amenities contribution, the following amenities will be included in the phase development agreement. An additional 183 acres of parkland, 51-acre site to be dedicated to the district for district uses. Amenity contribution per unit of $9,100 with no maximum. Oh, I'm sorry, that's $9,200 with no maximum. So under the existing MOU, there was a suggestion that there would be a maximum cap at 5.8 million. And because we've reduced the maximum or removed the maximum, the potential contribution goes up to 6.3 million. There's also a requirement for the construction of a 1,300 cubic meter expansion to the existing pump station. There'll be pathways pathway constructed from foothills to the Philip Alts Road intersection. Also, the construction of a roundabout at the Harwood Alts Road intersection. Last but not least, there's also commitment for the preparation of a park strategy. And it's within this strategy that there would be further identification of village walkways, gravel trailhead parking areas, provision of public washrooms, drinking fountains, children play structures, and so forth. So I think I'll stop there. And with council's indulgence, I'll continue to share my screen because I know that the applicant's agent does have a presentation, and then I'll be running the slideshow for them. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Limshu. At this point, I will now call on the applicant, Edward Porter, principal of Modus, if he wishes to speak to the application. Well, I'm sure he is going to speak to the application. You have up to 10 minutes.
Thank you, Worship.
Yes,
Is that on?
is.
That was on? That's on. Great. Thank you, and thank you, Director Limshu. Just a few words. I'll make it quick. I'm Edward Porter, principal and community planner with
Just
Modus.
hold on a second there, please, Councilor Castleberg.
Unfortunate, these microphones, as soon as you turn your head, you lose some of it, and
Okay.
there's hearing impaired over on this side at least a little bit. So I just ask you if you could
Get right in there.
get right on it because I don't want to miss a word. Okay?
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Edward Porter, principal and community planner with Modus planning, design, and engagement. We're a small consulting firm, and we specialize in engagement-led community planning and design. The majority of our work is actually supporting local governments and their efforts to effectively engage local residents in discussions around community priorities, long-term planning, and growth management. On occasion, we work with developers, work with developer clients to explore opportunities on privately owned lands. And such has been the case with the foothills. Having initially been hired by Lone Tree to explore the village design at the foothills, our overall planning approach resonated with the ownership group overall, and we were happy to assume that role as lead planner, lead community planner, really almost 2 years ago to the day. When we first got involved in the project, if you'd please advance to the next slide, Director Limshew. We had a review of what's currently on the books in terms of looking at the official community plan and how the lands are designated, the zoning bylaw, et cetera, as well as looking at some of the council priorities for your term. And we immediately saw an opportunity for a real win-win in updating the plan. Many of those strategic priorities would be addressed at the same time that we saw measurable improvements to the plan being achieved in this process. Next slide, please. Specifically, we saw opportunities to improve on overall land use designations to be more intentional around where and what development allowed on the land, relative to more compact and complete community building at the foothills. Next slide, please. And we broke this out. You can see simply in the land use overview, we see a high-level impression of sort of split of land use, and it tells a compelling story. We saw significant parkland expansion. We saw the opportunity for the dedication of additional district lands, finer distinction and diversification of uses within those neighborhood lands, and considering distinct neighborhood centers and how living at the foothills could organize around those places. We saw a wider range of housing forms within that foothills residential, as well as those lower density upland areas being largely preserved as they are. Next slide, please. And, oh, was there one before that? We lost a slide. There it is. And Director Limshew covered off much of this, but specifically what we saw the plan update and the PDA delivering was consolidation of parks and open space, including that 1,100 acres of protected district and parklands, representing approximately 60% of the overall site area and representing about 15% of the District of Lantzville's overall land base in protected public lands. We saw opportunities for the protection of environmentally sensitive areas, specifically incorporating 98% of the identified ESAs within public parkland dedication. And what we're excited about is we see room to do even better through the environmental DP process in finer grained design as we move through to subdivision. We see protection of and preservation of these community landmarks that are so critical to the community, like the Upper Lookout, like Hecla Creek Canyon, and like Copley and Lone Tree Summits as part of that parkland and the expansion. We saw that at the cost of a very marginal increase in density, moving that from an overall unit count of 730 units to the 814 units. We saw shifts to opportunities for a change in zoning allowances so that we can increase housing diversity with an emphasis on ground-oriented forms, but also holding limited opportunities in the right location for things like low-rise condo in and around those neighborhood centers. We saw opportunities to update policy that would guide accessible community gathering spaces and the creation of those neighborhood commercial spaces to support those residential's daily needs within those neighborhood centers. And then beyond that, as Director Limshew spoke to in more specific terms, additional community amenities and civic district infrastructure is provided through the provisions of the phase development agreement that we'll be bringing forward. In addition to water systems, also the community amenity contributions and development cost charge contributions. Next slide, please. And while all those numbers are measurably impressive, We're most excited by the opportunity of what implementation means at the foothills. It means completing the vision, building from the existing successes of what's already built at the foothills and further contributing to those who currently call this place home. Next slide, please. It means building greater diversity of housing types, from single detached and duplex to townhomes and low-rise condo forms. I think back one, I think we may have double advanced. There you go, thank you. To support a more diverse range of homes, of buyers, and life stages, it means exploring the opportunities to physically, socially, and spiritually connect those diverse neighborhoods to each other and this special place through thoughtful designs of buildings and green spaces. Next slide, please. It means implementing the village and all that will bring to the community as a place to gather and connect, a place to pick up a loaf of bread, a liter of milk when the kids need it, or catch a coffee and grab and catch up with a neighbor you don't see often enough. And last slide, please. It means building the gateway to the great outdoors that we believe the foothills to promise, providing better access to Lantzville's backcountry backyard. And so despite all of the effort to get here, we're most excited by the fact that this is just the beginning. Last slide, please, which is the next slide. Oops. There you go. Yep, it's just the finish. So a final word of thanks to everyone who's helped us get here. As a planning firm, we're always grateful for the opportunity to work with a well-resourced and locally invested development partner, as has been the case with Lone Tree and the Foothills. A thank you to Allard and his team for their ongoing efforts and the commitment to listen to and hear the community to adapt and implement this vision. We're grateful to work with our local government partners and public servants, with mayor, council, and staff. We recognize your responsibility to the current and future citizenry in making good decisions about our future land uses. Thank you particularly to district staff for all the work and their thorough review of the application and the preparation of the bylaws and associated reports. Finally, we know we're lucky to live in such a beautiful place and appreciate the passion that community members bring to our discussions in Lantzville. We're grateful for the time and the input that everyone has provided. Thank you to all who continue to be a part of the dialogue, from the homeowners of the built phases at the foothills through the online and in-person engagements around this application. We appreciate all you continue to contribute in helping us define and refine this vision for the foothills. Thank you to everyone, and we look forward to your comments.
Great, thank you. So at this point, does any member of council have any questions for the presenter? Okay, Councillor Gusselbrook, if you wish.
Thank you. I want to thank Mr. Porter, as well as the owner's representative. It's been a great process watching the foothills unfold.
So Councillor Gusselbrook, I need you to ask questions, if you can, please.
I'm leading into the question. You want to thank people first. So my question is this: if this comprehensive development proposal is passed, what sort of timeline are we looking at to actually getting shovels in the ground and building this village?
Hi, thanks for the question.
If you can just state your name and address.
Thank
for the
you.
record, please.
My name is Allard Aucaloon. I'm the director and CEO of Lone Tree Properties Limited, and we keep our address here in Lantzville. And so from the point of approval, we will commence design for the next phase of our development, and that will be, I expect, a 2024 shovels in the ground for housing, first multifamily housing. We have a current phase of construction of single-family lots that will close in 2023. So we're in that 2-year cycle.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor
Follow-up
Gusselbrook.
question. I think this would be for Mr. Porter. I'm looking at page 31 of our agenda, which has some of the conceptual drawings, and you showed it up on the screen here during your presentation. Now, are there both 3- and 4-story buildings that will be in the village?
Excuse me, that is correct insofar as that's permitted within the comprehensive development zone. That we see townhouse forms of typical 3 stories stacked up to 4, and the possibility of low-rise condo forms where we see market potential. We don't see that anytime in the immediate future, but the CD zone does permit those building heights.
Will there be underground parking?
That would be a question for the time of design. I think we would like to see as much underground parking as we can in terms of minimizing the impacts of parking. Some of that will be very much subject to physical design constraints, site conditions, price point, and constructability. So it's a little bit too early to say. We like to look at tuck under, where we can use natural hillsides to tuck parking under, again, make it disappear, but not have to get into the blasting and excavation and the cost associated with that. Foothills certainly has a lot of hillside, so there's a potential to use parking and building structure to retain and fit into the landscape.
So those decisions will be made at the development permit stage.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Unless there's any further questions from council, we'll move on. Okay, hearing or seeing none, we'll move on then. So at this point, I will be calling for a first time persons registered remotely and in council chamber who believe that their interest in property is affected by proposed bylaws 279 and 280. Please wait for your name to be called, and when it is your turn, state your name, full name, and civic address. Staff will proceed through the remote registrant list first, and then through the gallery registrant list. When it is your turn, staff will call your name, and you may give us your input regarding the proposed bylaws. You will have up to 3 minutes to speak. I will let speakers know when you have 30 seconds left and when your time is up. So at this point, through to staff.
At this point, we have no one registered remote,
Okay.
and we have 2 speakers registered from in the chambers. The first speaker is Brian Blood, and if we could ask the next speaker, Lance Kesselbrecht, to go to the back of the room to be ready to step up when it's his turn
Sure.
next.
Thank you. So name and address for the record, please.
Brian Blood, 7075 Gillette Road. No development application, like no municipality, is perfect, but this one's pretty good. I've had a lifelong association with the lands, now known as the Lantzville Foothills. I had the pleasure of serving almost 20 years ago on our fledgling municipality's first OCP steering committee that was tasked with conducting the preliminary negotiations with the Foothills Development Group. Pleasure, because the development group was amenable to the trade-offs that were made for density in locations that made sense for them and the community, and a huge area of wilderness parkland that is the jewel in Lantzville's crown. There were some difficulties along the way. I don't think I'll bother mentioning the lower lookout, but we won't forget that process. When the 05 OCP committee members, Terry Murphy, John Halliwell, and I worked with former planner Kyle Young to establish the specific on-the-ground locations for the park designation, we arrived, I can confidently say, at a Foothills Park system that reflects the wishes of residents as expressed in the public consultation process for the 2005 OCP. These specific parklands, now over approximately 1,100 acres, encompass almost all the areas identified in the written submissions and the verbal submissions at kitchen meetings and the larger public meetings at Coston Hall. It was a very thorough public participation that was held. These park locations are as good as it gets in a development local government process that will allow for public recreational access and environmental protection of sensitive plant and animal communities if we take that next step. The Foothills District Partnership should serve as a model for other development applications in this district and elsewhere. And I see no reason why council wouldn't proceed to third reading on this. Having said this, the relationship is not over, and I have concerns for the future, which I will address in my second turn at the microphone.
Okay, thank you. Next speaker. And just name and address for the record, please.
Lance Kesselbrock, 7365 Spence's Way. Thank you for the presentation. I got to tell you, I had a deja vu moment during the presentation. I thought I was looking at Village South there for a second. With the nice setbacks and the 2 and 3, 4 story, that was nice. I think it's important to remind people in council chambers that development is an incredibly expensive and risky proposition. The first developers of the foothills, and I don't think everyone that's new to this community realizes, the original developers went bankrupt. That was a time during very, good economic expansion, a lot of houses being sold, but they still got themselves into a position where they had to declare bankruptcy. So it's very expensive up there to do any development. I was struck that there wasn't any letters in opposition to this development, and that would be the lone development proposal that's come before this council in the last 2 years without any letters of opposition. That's remarkable, absolutely remarkable. I was reading the loan letter, which the prior speaker was the author of, that one of the recommendations made in that was that the parkland be given to the RDN. This is Lantzville property. It's being given to Lantzville as a park. Parks are expensive. I don't see any amenity contribution along with this parkland. If there isn't things that are done to make it a park, then it isn't a park. It's just a wild area. I think there needs to be an initial survey, an environmental assessment of existing animal and flora that needs to be protected. I think there's some trail designations that need to be made, maybe some trail construction. That's expensive. We're a little community here. Our public works guys are overworked already. They have no time to go up there into the foothills and create a park or even maintenance, anything that you would call a park. So
30 seconds.
It's nice that we're getting this contribution, but I think there needs to be an amenity contribution along with it to fund the work that's going to be needed to make it an actual park. And I sure the hell don't want to see it leave Lantzville.
And through to staff, have we had any remotely registered participants?
We have one.
Okay.
Armando Cornetos.
Okay, so I think we'll treat this speaker as a first-time speaker. So, Mr. Carnijo, if you can hear me, you can take off your mute and state your name and address for the record, please. Do you need to, through to Deputy Director Richardson, do you need to unmute the speaker, or is that done by the speaker?
No, I've asked them to unmute. Sometimes people were registered, not necessarily wanting to speak.
Sure.
And unfortunately, because this is a late they've left, so they probably didn't want to speak.
Sure. All right, so at this point, I'll just go back to the script. I will call for the second time for persons registered remotely and in council chambers who have new information to present and wish to speak again. If you wish to speak again via Zoom, please use the Zoom raise hand feature to indicate that you would like to speak again. This function can be found in your webinar controls. If you're participating via telephone, the raise hand function can be activated by pressing *9 on your keypad. If you are in a council chamber and wish to speak again, please use the second speaker's opportunity list for bylaws 279-280 located on the table at the entrance to the council chamber. So we don't have anybody registered remotely, so we will move to the second time speakers to Director Coates.
Yes, and I have the list here if anybody else was thinking about signing it. So the first speaker for the second opportunity is Hans Larson, who's actually speaking for his first time.
Okay, and again, just name and address for the record, please.
Hans Larson, 7010 Owen Road. I hadn't actually planned to address this particular development tonight, but listening to the presentations, I was reminded of a couple of things, and I thought I'd just bring them forward. I'm not strongly for or strongly against this particular development, but I do note two things. One is that, and I think the most important one for me is that I'm not quite sure exactly how Lantzville is going to work with two villages. I know we say we're a village community, but I don't hear too many people say we're a villages community. So that's something they're going to have to work out, because I think there's going to be kind of a bit of a tug of war back and forth for business and that kind of thing. The other thing, and I think it's just an obvious observation of the fact that we're decreasing the residential land mass, increasing the number of units, therefore obviously we're increasing the density. I did see, I think, some lots down to as small as 400 square meters. For a property the size of the foothills, that seems pretty small, but I'll wait and look forward to seeing the actual plans when they come forward to see exactly how that's going to work. Thank you.
Okay, through staff. Next person, please.
And the next speaker for the second turn is Brian Blood.
And again, name and address for the record, please.
Brian Blood, 7075 Colette Road. Fire. I didn't shout that, so don't head for the exits. Fire is the most significant risk in the foothills to the parklands and to the human community. In some respects, wildfire is a natural event, and these areas have burnt over before, and the environment has recovered, probably many times since the glacial retreat. Most recently, in 1926, a fire started near Superior Road from human activity. It swept across most of what is now Upper Lantzville in a single hot August afternoon, driven by a fierce northwest wind. My mother's family, the Copleys, were at home on the farm at the foot of the ridge and spent the day with wet sacks on the roofs of the farm buildings, damping down firebrands that were flying through the air. The farm buildings were located in the middle of cleared fields and were protected from the full impact of the flames, which swept around both sides, and they survived. When the flames hit the base of the ridge, all the family's members described the event in the same way, like the sound of a freight train, like a blacksmith's forge. The funnel effect swept up the face of the ridge in under 10 minutes. This is phase one of the foothills, already largely built. I haven't looked that closely, but I hope these homes are constructed to fire smart standards superior to those of the district, which is woefully unprepared for climate change or another historical event like the 1926 fire. No new building in Lantzville should be constructed with inflammable cladding or roofing. Future phases of the development need the highest fire smart standards for their own security, not the lowest standards in BC of our municipality. Dead-end roads in zones of high interface higher fire risk are aptly named dead end. We have all seen the horrifying dash cam shots from vehicles speeding through smoke and flames towards safety. We don't see the ones that didn't make it. Fire smart means having more than one egress route. The road layout of future phases must address this. Steep, narrow, dead-end, and strata roads to enable prime development sites is not an answer. To not address these issues in the planning stages is irresponsible for the developer and for the municipality. I hope the good working relationship between these two agencies can continue and address these truly life and death issues. Fire will come again.
Okay, through to staff, any additional second-time registered speakers?
No, we do not have any.
Okay, at this point, I will call for a third time for persons registered remotely. I don't think we have anybody registered remotely, but I will go through. That have new information to present and wish to speak. If you wish to speak again remotely, please use the Zoom raise hand feature. This function can be found in your webinar controls. If you're participating by telephone, the raise hand function can be activated by pressing *9 on your keypad. If you're in the council chambers and wish to speak again, please sign the third speaker's opportunity list for bylaws 279280 located on the table at the entrance of the council chamber. Before I close this hearing, I will ask if there's anyone else not registered remotely or in council chambers that wishes to speak regarding bylaws 279 and 280. If you wish to speak again, we ask that you register now. Okay, and I don't know if anybody's signed a third time. Again, I'm calling for a second time for people to register or sign the sign-in list. Okay, Director Limshu, you have your hand up.
Through to Mayor Swain, I'm having a hard time hearing you through your mic. It sounds like you're muffled, so I'm not sure if other folks online are having the same difficulty.
Okay, thank you for that. Sometimes it's if that microphone is on, that sometimes will cause that. But how is it now, Director Limshu?
It's a bit better.
Okay, I'll try and speak into it closer, I suppose. At this point, so we have another registered or signed person that's signed to speak.
On the form for third opportunity is Brian Blood.
Now you have to turn on that microphone.
Brian
Thank
Blood,
you.
7075 Colette Road. The parkland areas should provide protection for most of the significant natural values of much of the foothills. This is currently the District of Lantzville's responsibility, and they are failing. It is too much to expect a little municipality to provide supervision of human activity over such a wide area of parkland, and the regional district is better placed to manage this asset. Off-road vehicles, motorbikes, even cyclists and hikers are damaging the sensitive upland arbutus meadows that represent one of the most unique ecosystems in Lantzville, and something needs to be done immediately to address this. The thin soil on the rock domes took centuries to accumulate, and once eroded and washed away, leaves lifeless, barren rock. The issue more at hand between the district and the developers concerns the upland swamps, ponds, and hardhack swamps that remain in the development areas. Like the same habitats in the park areas, they are home to unique, and if not endangered, then rare amphibians and plant communities and insects, such as the locally rare red meadowhawk dragonfly. They are also a source of water for terrestrial wildlife. As a human community, do we say, oh well, we can protect these areas in the park so we can forget about them in the development area, or do we have a responsibility for these ecosystems everywhere in the district? If the latter is true, then there are risks that need to be addressed in this and future phases. These wet areas, although often in the higher elevation areas of the development, represent lower drainage areas in their local geography. Water drains into them from the surrounding landscape. When that landscape contains roads, driveways, roofs, and landscaping, these sensitive amphibians will be toast. From very small, for even very small amounts of pollution, if they can continue as unfiltered drainage basins, will destroy these ecosystems. And I think the question is how can it be done, and will it be done? And I think when the build out for the homes in the area is underway, I would suggest a program of signage and education that be in place for children and adults to observe and study these natural treasures without destroying them. Each neighborhood needs to become a part of the stewardship of these ecosystems.
30 seconds.
Or the natural values of the whole foothills concept will be degraded.
And there's no additional third time speakers registered. Okay. So at this point, I will be calling a third and final time for comments before this hearing is closed. I'm going to give a brief pause just in case. Yes, yeah, you can come to the microphone then. Yeah, just go straight to the microphone. And if there's any other individuals in chambers that wishes to speak, I suggest you just line up at the podium at this time, please.
My name is Joan Jones. I live at 7255 Ellesmere Drive. I wasn't planning to speak, but hearing a little more about the application, a couple of things came to mind. One of them is that residents are very sensitive when they hear the word four-story buildings. I guess I didn't pay attention. I hadn't realized that was an option in the foothills, and it might be one that residents speak up to more when you get to the phase development agreement and are looking more closely at that. The other thing I wanted to mention has to do with sensitive ecosystems, and Brian Blood has already spoken to the lower areas with respect to water runoff. This area also has a very sensitive ecosystem up on the mountaintops. I believe it's called herbaceous terrestrial ecosystem. It's one of BC's most endangered. And up on the top of, for example, Bald Mountain, you'll see arbutus and manzanita and pines and water ponds and a lot of lichen as well on the sort of bald surface. It's very important that people don't tramp all over the place when they're up on this mountain, because the lichen and the wildflowers are part of that sensitive ecosystem. So I'm just asking that when you get to the stage of looking at that park and protection, you consider the high areas as well as the low areas. Thank you.
Okay. Seeing no one who wishes to speak, I will be declaring this public hearing for District of Lantzville Official Community Plan Bylaw number 150-2019 Amendment Foothills Special Plan Area Bylaw number 279-2021 and District of Lantzville Zoning Bylaw number 180-2020 Amendment Foothills Comprehensive Development Zone Bylaw number 280-2021 closed. So at this point, we'll be moving on to agenda items 3B, or agenda item 3B for bylaws 315 and 316. For those of you who are watching via our live stream, please note that you can still join the Zoom webinar to speak to proposed bylaws 315, 316, 317, and 318 on tonight's agenda by going to lantzville.ca, clicking the July 27th in the calendar, click the view details, and follow the instructions to register in the Zoom webinar link provided. I will now proceed to the public hearing for agenda item 3B. This public hearing is being convened in order to consider proposed District of Lantzville.
As point of privilege, please.
Yes, go ahead, Councillor Savage.
Yeah, it's very hard to hear you, which is fine, but could you just indicate by calling me when it's time for me to leave, please? Thank you.
So I think if this would be the appropriate time.
Okay, thank you. I'll be recusing myself from the meeting due to conflict of interest due to my proximity of my property to the upcoming public hearing. And it's been arranged that I'll be phoned when that's over. I'll be rejoining for the third reading of the foothills, and I'll be leaving the meeting permanently with your permission, Chair, after that. Thank you.
And for clarity, the declaration of conflict is regarding items 3B and item 3C.
Is that correct, Councillor Savage?
So 6701 Harwood Drive and 6717 Harwood Drive. There's two public hearings.
So through to Councillor Savage, are you declaring conflict on both?
Yes, I'm declaring conflict on both. So thank you.
Thank you for that. All right, so continuing along, I'll just restart.
He just needs to leave.
So this public hearing is being convened in order to consider proposed District of Lantzville Official Community Plan Bylaw number 150-2019 Amendment 6701 Harwood Drive Bylaw number 315-2022 and District of Lantzville Zoning Bylaw 180-2020 Amendment 6701 Harwood Drive Bylaw number 316-2022. During this public hearing, any person in attendance who believes that their interest in property is affected by proposed bylaws 315 and 316 shall be given an opportunity to be heard on the matters contained in the proposed bylaws. However, it is important that all who speak at this hearing restrict their remarks to matters contained in the bylaws. Those of you who have registered to speak concerning the proposed bylaws should, at the appropriate time after your name is being called to speak, begin your comments by clearly stating your name and civic address. After this hearing is concluded, council may, without further notice, give whatever effect council believes proper to the representations made at this hearing. I will now call on the Director of Planning and Community Services, Mr. Frank Limshu, to introduce the proposed bylaws. So through to you, Director Limshu.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just going to share my screen. Can everybody see a copy of the plan in front of them on the screen? Yes?
Yes, we can see it.
Thank you. So the public hearing is being held to consider two amendment bylaws, one for the official community plan and one for the zoning. The subject, the owner of the property has made application to amend both the OCP and the zoning for the purposes of accommodating a future single-family residential subdivision. The subject property is approximately 2.03 hectares or 5 acres. The property is currently designated as state residential under the existing OCP, and it's also zoned estate residential under the existing zoning. In order to accommodate the proposed development application to create the subdivision as shown on the plan to the right, the subject lands the OCP designation and the zoning for the subject lands would have to be amended to R2. So with respect to the existing zoning, state residential, the minimum parcel size is 0.4 hectares. That's 1 acre. Under the proposed R2 zone, the minimum parcel size would be reduced down to 1,300 square meters. That's approximately a third of an acre. The subject property is currently within the water service area. However, it is outside of the sewer service area. So should the bylaws be amended, the property owner will have to make application to be included in the sewer service area. And that would be done prior to the subdivision of the property. With respect to amenity contribution, the applicant is proposing a community amenity contribution of $3,000 per lot, up to a maximum of $39,000. As well, they're also proposing an additional $20,000 put towards the Upper Lantzville water system or any other community project that the District of Lantzville deems appropriate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And at this point, I will now call on the applicant, Mr. Toby Seward, Principal of Seward Developments Incorporated, if he wishes to speak to the application for up to 10 minutes. I see that he is online.
Thank you, Mayor Swain. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
I am experiencing the same problem that there's a fair bit of baffle in the online version. Please tell me if that's happening with my presentation, and I'll try and be quite clear.
You're coming through very clear, so.
Very good, thank you. So the Dolan family has owned this property for 17 years. They purchased in 2005, and they've lived in Upper Lantzville for 34 years. They lived just across the road. As Director Limshu has said, they wish to subdivide and build on the property. Their goal is to build a smaller home on their property to retire in, because the house they currently have is where they raised their two sons. One of the other things they want to do is give their two sons the opportunity to also purchase lots in the development and build there as well. The interesting thing with this development is that in approximately 1990, one property owner owned 12 acres. This property on the side of the road, the one on the other side of the road, and the now Olds Road extension. So he made a agreement with Lantzville Council to give up the road, which is 2 acres, and have it constructed a 20-meter road right away, and then have the 5-acre lots on each side, understanding that was no servicing at the time, but in the future, there may be an opportunity to subdivide it as per this application. As the OCP and the zoning has been identified, so I won't go further into that. We had a public information meeting 2 weeks ago. 9 people attended. One of the interesting comments is some of the people attending said they want to seek smaller lots, less maintenance, which is contrary to a lot of people are looking for bigger lots, but I found that quite interesting. Certainly there was concerns raised about growth in the area, but generally the comments from the participants was generally supportive. What our goal is to mirror the Clark Drive lots, which are 0.3 to 0.4 hectares, and 0.3 to 0.4 acres. And as I say, Clark Drive and many of the properties on Harewood Road and Olds Road are of similar size. So it would be very consistent with what's already there. If you drive down Clark Drive, there's well-established homes built between 1975 and 1990. They're large lots with very established foliage, and have some very nice homes built on those properties. A number of written submissions have been received by council, asking council to maintain the current OCP and zoning and not to increase density. Our position on the application is that that there is now servicing available on these properties, and it is the opportunity to go forward and create 1/3 acre lots and create more opportunity for housing in this area. Another concern that was raised is the density, and we're proposing 7 units per hectare, which is a very low density. We're certainly not looking to put a lot of units in this property. The other comment I've heard a number of times is housing diversity. People don't want to see just the same thing built over and over. And the owner's goal is to build some ranchers, some 2 stories, possible duplexes on corner lots or carriage houses. We propose to put a park at the end of the subdivision. In discussions with staff, we put forward that proposal shown on the plan, though if council prefers, we would commit cash and loan instead. So that's my comments. Thank you for the opportunity. I may wish to speak again a second time after the other participants. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And through to council, are there any questions for the applicant? Okay, hearing or seeing none, I will move along. At this point, I will call for the first time persons registered remotely and in council chamber who wish that their interest in property is affected by the proposed bylaws 315 and 316. Please wait for your name to be called, and when it is your turn, state your full name and civic address. Staff will proceed through the remote registrant list first and then through the gallery registrant list. When it is your turn, staff will call your name, and then you may give us your input regarding the proposed bylaws. You'll have up to 3 minutes to speak. I will let speakers know when you have 30 seconds left and when your time is up. So through to staff. Do we have any? I don't see any remotely registered people, so that's easy. And then I'll wait for Director Coates to call upon the first person registered in chambers.
Yes, we have 5 speakers registered for in the chambers, and if they could queue up, the first speaker is Lance Gesselbrecht, followed by Joan Jones. And the sheet is on the table for people who wish to speak for a second round. Next up is Joan Jones, followed by Susan Cormie.
So you'll have to press the little button, make things red, and then name and address for the record, please.
My name is Joan Jones. My name is Joan Jones, 7255 Ellesmere Drive. Thank you, Your Worship, for this opportunity to speak. It's a little bit of confusion that I know we've all felt with respect to, can we speak to both these applications because of their similar nature, or are we only speaking to one at a time, if you don't mind clarifying?
Yes, you need to speak to just one at a time.
Okay, I will speak then to the one which is up, which is 6701, also with the caveat that everything I say here applies to the other application as well, then I won't repeat it later.
Again, everything you state is in relation to this
Yes,
specific
I'll try to
application.
change
So
my
if you-
tenses. Yeah,
If you wish to speak to the other one, you'll have to speak again later.
And
Thank
this
you-
is
thank you.
regarding 315 and 316 bylaws, the 2 bylaws.
Yes, the 2 bylaws. So you're speaking to the OCP amendment as well as the rezoning amendment. Okay.
thank you for that. I would like to speak to the public process for this application. Later this evening, council considers 3rd readings for the development at number 6701. The property is 5 acres in size, and the zoning requested, as we've seen, is for 14 units. This is over 300% that permitted by the current estate residential zoning. Request for rezoning came to this council late last month, in fact, just 5 weeks ago. At that meeting, Councillor Savage recused himself due to proximity of his property to the proposed development. Mayor Swain was unable to attend the meeting. Rezoning was considered by the remaining 3 councillors, Councillor Gesselbrecht, Councillor Proctor, and Councillor Wilson, who also filled in as acting mayor. The approval process proceeded rapidly. How rapidly? A motion was put on the floor. The acting mayor asked for discussion. The 3 councillors declined discussion. The question was called.
If you can say your point of order, Councillor Gesselbrecht.
Point of order, we know that this motion was passed. How is this person speaking to the application?
Why, I'm hoping this person will come to that very soon.
And I'm hoping I do too, Councillor Gesselbrecht. I'll certainly do my best. Residents witnessed this for motions on 1st reading, 2nd reading, and for approving the public hearing tonight. Approval took about 15 minutes. The process for this application has been rushed. There must have been an information meeting, but I, like most residents, never heard about it. We know now that the required information meeting was held on, I believe, June 14th. A notice was taken to neighbors. I could not find the information meeting on the district web's calendar. Why? Is there an assumption here that residents of Lantzville do not care? Show me proof that residents are only concerned about the view from their windows. Where are the residents tonight? Let's check our calendars. It's the summer holidays. School ended and graduations followed. This was 4 weeks ago. An application was put through for 2nd readings, and this just before the July long weekend, and now 3rd reading just before the August long weekend. Do I need to go on? Many residents have said this already. Do not schedule public hearings over the summer holidays.
30 seconds.
Who would do this? Sadly, this council has. What we have here is is interpreted as complete disrespect for the residents of Lantzville. Residents are angry. Let's get this right. Turn down this application until we have a council willing to engage with residents, to negotiate with the developers, to create a unique, enviable development plan, one which benefits the whole community. Thank you.
And staff, if you can call upon the next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Susan Cormy, followed by Hans Larson.
Susan Cormy, 7130 Sebastian Road. People just want an open and fair planning process, and they want to understand the rationale behind the decisions made by council. This is what good governance is about. You as council have a duty to conduct good governance. You owe that to the public. In this case, no planning rationale has been given, nor has there been an open and fair public consultation process. These amendment applications are being rushed through at lightning speed. They were received only 5 weeks ago, and remember, this application involves an OCP amendment, which should add a level of complexity to the review process. Why is this application being rushed? The only explanation I can think of is that council is placing the personal interests of the property owners above that of the community. I should not have to remind you that this is your job as councillors to represent the community, not individual landowners. Yet I am here reminding you of this. It is no wonder that the community does not trust some members of council and their actions.
Okay, I've had enough. That's an objection. I really
Councillor
resent this
Gusselbrack,
tone.
you
I
can
object.
call it. You can call.
I'm calling
a
it.
point of order.
I'm calling a point of order.
And can you please state your point of order?
She's being disrespectful. We have a code of conduct policy for people speaking at public meetings, and she's gone way over the line. I know what my duty is as a councillor. She doesn't need to tell me that.
You have stated your point of order, Councillor Gusselbrack. Okay. If there's any other members of council who wish to state a point of order, if you can wait until you're addressed by the chair. Okay, Councillor Proctor, if you wish.
Point of order. I think that the speakers need to speak to the bylaw, not councillors' conduct or our decision-making abilities. There's other avenues they have to object to those things. This is a public hearing. We're supposed to be discussing bylaw 315 and 316, respectfully.
Okay, so through to council, at this point, I believe the speaker is speaking to the process. However, I would encourage the speaker to basically keep your comments again directed on the proposed bylaws for this evening. If you want to continue to speak about
I will continue speaking
the process,
about
I
the
think that
process.
is fair. But
Thank
in
you.
terms of speaking to how councillors should be making decisions, I would ask that you refrain from speaking to that, please.
It should not be too much for the community to expect an open and fair planning process. Residents may not always be happy with the final decision, but at least they would understand and accept that the fair process was conducted. We live in a world where democracy is compromised all around us. Let's not do it here in Lantzville. Please deny this application.
Okay, and through to staff, if you can call the next speaker, please.
Yes, I believe I asked Hans Larson to be ready to be next up, and he's followed by Rochelle Mundell. If we could ask the speakers to queue up so they're ready.
And name and address for the record, please.
Hans Larson, 7010 Owen Road. I'd like to start off by offering you an apology for a typo in my written communications to you earlier today. I had indicated a park of 1/3 acre size. It's actually 1 1/3 acres plus the original 0.25, so 1.6 acres is what I'm talking about as far as a park at the end of the subdivision. So I'm speaking on behalf of my spouse and myself in opposition to the District of Lantzville OCP Amendment Bylaw number 315-2022 and Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 316-2022. We have several concerns with this development application. Here we have another rushed application, less than 5 weeks from introduction to public hearing, resulting in 3 public hearings in one night in the middle of summer and just before a long weekend. Based on the information that I've been able to ascertain regarding this proposal, my spouse and I are opposed to this OCP amendment and rezoning for this property in Upper Lantzville. Yet again, my feedback to the public information meeting, submitted a day before the July 22nd deadline, in which I highlighted a number of concerns in which the applicant said would be forwarded to the district, could not be found on the district's application web pages. Estate residential was designed to provide a transition buffer between residential zoning and rural zoning. This proposal doesn't provide that. From east to west, it abuts the rural area, minimum of 5 acres, and the lot size in the proposal is an almost uniform 1/3 of an acre, which is very similar to the residential areas to the north and east. Not much of a transition. Page 78 of the OCP states that there's also potential for residential infill in key locations between existing neighborhoods in Upper Lantzville. This is not infill and certainly not key, and this property is not between existing neighborhoods. It also goes on to state that there is community desire to avoid cookie-cutter subdivisions. Unfortunately, this is the epitome of that. Found under Goal 2, Preserve Community Character, OCP Section 5.2.7.3, Density Bonus explained in Part 2, Section
30
8
seconds.
of the OCP. The district may apply a bonus density in residential areas outside the special plan areas without amendment to this plan, where the development plan includes parkland acceptable to the district in addition to the required 5% dedication required under the Local Government Act and a community amendment contribution. I will hold the rest of my comments to my second opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Okay, I'll call the next speaker to the podium, please, and then the next person queued up is...
The next speaker is Rochelle Mundell, and I would ask everybody to sign the form for the second round if they're interested.
And name and address for the record, please.
My name is Rochelle Mundell, 6711 Alger Road. I'm in opposition or opposing this proposal, and not because I entirely disagree with the development, but more so the process. I haven't had the chance to hear about fully the proposals because they've come through so quickly. I, like others in our community, am occupied in a full-time vocation and have a young family. So how can we expect residents to have the time to review these proposals when they're coming through so quickly, and when we weren't even invited to the information or welcome to that information session? So please include all of us. This is a small community, and what affects one area impacts all of Lantzville. So take the time, I ask council, get this right with adequate community-wide consultation. Thank you.
Okay, so at this point, given there's nobody registered remotely, I will skip that section. At this point, if you are in the council chambers and wish to speak again, please sign the second speaker's opportunity list for bylaws 315 and 316 located on the table at the entrance to the council chamber. Okay, and through to staff, if you can
Yes,
call out
we
the
have
first
Hans
speakers.
Larson for a second opportunity, followed by Lance Gesselbrecht.
Point of order.
And your point of order, please.
There's talking in the audience, and I find it distracting.
Okay, so if members of the gallery can just refrain from talking, please, that'd be helpful. And name and address for the record, please.
Hans Larson, 7010 Owen Road. I was finishing off my first bout with talking about 5.2.7.3 of the official community plan regarding additional parkland. For the fourth time now, an application doesn't meet this requirement of our OCP for additional parkland in addition to a community amenity contribution in a density bonus situation such as this, almost tripling the density from 5 to 14 units. While the applicants are proposing to provide some additional community amenity contributions, this does not negate the requirement for the additional parkland under section 5.2.7.3. since in this case, they are providing actual parkland to fulfill the Local Government Act mandated 5%. This additional parkland could simply be added to that. By calculation, the applicants are requesting a density increase of 4.5 units per hectare. Under the old 2005 OCP, this large an increase would not be permitted. 2.5 was the maximum. But even if there was no limit, it would require the applicant to provide 32% of total parkland, and here you are again on a path to accept a minimum statutory requirement of 5%. Why will you not protect or defend the community of Lantzville for their due for accepting increased density in their neighborhoods? If you did what our OCP requires on the same basis as the old OCP, making the park at the west end 1.6 acres, and thereby also providing some of that lack of transition we are also concerned about. As has been previously so succinctly stated in some other area official community plans, residents, through their participation in the planning and public hearing processes, are the final arbiters of community values. Thank you for your careful consideration of our position on this important matter.
Okay, and if the next speaker wants to come to the podium, please.
Next speaker is
And
Lance
again,
Kesselbrack.
name and address for the record, please. Okay, we'll call upon, are there any other second-time speakers? All right, at this point, I will call for a third time for persons registered. Well, actually, we have nobody registered remotely, so again, I will move through that for the time, or pass that for the sake of being faster. So if you're in the council chamber and wish to speak again, please sign the third speaker's opportunity list for bylaws 315 and 316, located on the table at the entrance of the council chamber. So I'm just giving a pause to let that happen. Oh. Sorry, I had my microphone off. So, Mr. Seward, I'm just going to wait for Director Coates to come back, and then we'll proceed with your third time speaking, and then we'll go to the in-person registrants. Okay, so Mr. Seward, again, just name and address for the record, please.
Sorry, Mayor Swing. I can only hear a muffled version. Is it my opportunity to speak?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. I'll be very brief. Just 2 points that have been brought up. I wish to confirm I made application on behalf of the owners on March 24th, just over 4 months ago on this file. I've heard mention of 5 weeks for processing this file. So it's clearly just over 4 months. The second thing is the OCP, the state residential designation is in place in a number of areas throughout Lantzville. And it will stay a state residential unless servicing is eventually available in those areas. And if servicing is, as in this case, then there will be applications potentially coming forward for rezoning and potentially subdivision. This example, or this one and the one that's coming up next, have been sitting there as 5 acre lots, as we all realize, for a number of years, but now water is available. And as Director Limshu had mentioned, is we can make application for sewer, and that would be our intention. And we believe that it still provides a buffer down the end of Ald's Road, and we don't believe there's a buffer needed to the existing properties to the east, because they're existing residential properties as is. So thank you for the opportunity to provide those 2 comments.
Okay, and for in-person registered.
Yes, Hans Larson is registered.
Okay. And actually, just before you speak, Mr. Larson, I'm just going to read out the next portion. So before I declare this meeting, or this hearing closed, I'll ask anyone else who is not registered remotely or in the council chamber who wishes to speak regarding bylaws 315 and 316. If you wish to speak, please register now. And if you're planning on speaking, please line up behind the individual at the podium. So Mr. Larson, when you are ready, state your name and address for the record, please.
Hans Larson, 7010 Owen Road. I just wanted to make a few points about what I heard from several speakers just after I finished speaking last time. So the concerns about process are about these applications in particular, and therefore it's them that we're complaining or have been rushed, not anything else. And I think 5 weeks, which is the time that the public has been aware, even though Mr. Seward may have made application 4 months ago, but general public's only been aware of it for 5 weeks. As far as when the last water connection was made in Lantzville and how long we've been this sleepy little backwater, exceptions are always interesting. And I'm pretty sure that there's been at least one water connection made since 1994. And so we just need to be careful about what kind of absolutism we adopt in terms of trying to make a point. Thank you.
Okay. So at this point, doesn't look like there's anybody else. So again, I will call for a second time for anybody who wishes to speak for a third and final time, or fourth time. Okay, at this point, I'll just reiterate that after the close of this public hearing, council must not receive submissions from the public. Seeing no one who wishes to speak, I declare the public hearing for District of Lantzville Official Community Plan Bylaw number 150-2019, Amendment 6701 Harwood Drive Bylaw number 315-2022, and District of Lantzville Zoning Bylaw number 180-2020, Amendment 6701 Harwood Drive Bylaw number 316-2022 closed. All right. We'll continue on. So now we're on to agenda item 3C for bylaws 317 and 318. For those of you who are watching online via our live stream, please note that you can still join the Zoom webinar to speak to proposed bylaws 317 and 318 next on tonight's agenda by going to lantzville.ca, clicking on the July 27th in the calendar, click view details, and follow the instructions to register in the Zoom webinar link provided. I will now proceed to the public hearing for agenda item 3C. This public hearing is being convened in order to consider proposed District of Lantzville Official Community Plan Bylaw Number 150-2019, 2019 Amendment 6717 Harwood Drive, Bylaw Number 317-2022, and District of Lantzville Zoning Bylaw Number 180-2020 Amendment 6717 Harwood Drive, Bylaw Number 318-2022. During this public hearing, any person in attendance who believes that their interest in property is affected by proposed bylaws 317 and 318 shall be given an opportunity to be heard on the matters contained in the proposed bylaws. However, it is important that all who speak at this hearing restrict their remarks to matters contained in the bylaws. Those of you who have registered to speak concerning the proposed bylaws should, at the appropriate time after your name has been called to speak, begin your comments by clearly stating your name and a civic address. After this hearing is concluded, council may, without further notice, give whatever effect council believes proper to the representations made at this hearing. I will now call on the Director of Planning and Community Services, Mr. Frank Limshoe, to introduce the proposed bylaws. Through to Director Limshoe.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just going to share my screen.
And you are now sharing, so if you wish.
Great, thank you very much. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. So the proposed bylaws before council refers to an amendment to the official community plan and an amendment to the zoning. The property is located at 6717 Harwood Drive. It's approximately 2 hectares or 5 acres. The property owners have made application to amend both the official community plan and the zoning to accommodate a proposed single-family lot subdivision, as shown on the map to the plan to the right. The property is currently designated estate residential under the official community plan. As well, it is currently zoned estate under the zoning. In order to accommodate the proposed subdivision, as shown, the property would need to be rezoned to R2. The effects of that would mean that under the existing estate zone, the minimum parcel size is 1 acre or 0.4 hectares versus the R2 zone, the proposed R2 zone, which has a minimum parcel size of 0.13 hectares or 1,300 square meters. That's approximately a third of an acre. The applicant is proposing for its community amenity contributions, $3,000 per lot, up to a maximum of $39,000, as well as an additional $20,000 to be put towards the upgrade of the Upper Lantzville water system or any other project that the District of Lantzville sees fit. Thank you.
All right, thank you. At this point, I will call on the applicant, Mr. Toby Seward, Principal of Seward Developments Incorporated, to speak to the application for up to 10 minutes. So, Mr. Seward, hopefully you can hear my garble.
Thank you, Mayor Swain. Can you hear me okay?
Sure can.
Thank you to Mayor Swain and councillors for the opportunity to present Toby Seward, 1820 Argyle Avenue in Nanaimo. I've made application on behalf of the property owners, the Hayes family, on this file. The property owners have owned and lived on this property for 24 years and moved there in 1998, they're also getting to a stage where they would like to build a smaller home on their property and also have the possibility of accommodating their children, 2 children on the property if that materializes. Again, an example that many people are experiencing as the opportunity to stay in the area where they have lived and their family grew up, but the ability to build a smaller home. So that's clearly their goal here. And they would look forward to council endorsing this OCP and rezoning application. The information I've previously brought forward, I will just touch on very quickly again. The public hearing the public information meeting that we held, there wasn't any specific comments on this subdivision versus the other one. It's just the general comments that some people have perceived this as too dense, and we think 1/3 acre lots consistent with Clark Drive is not dense at all. It's would be very consistent with the surrounding neighborhood. We are looking for a number of the written submissions again mentioned want to maintain the current OCP and rezoning current zoning. And we just want to emphasize again is now that water is available and we can apply for sewer, it is a time to look forward to creating more single family lots in Lantzville of a reasonable size, 1/3 of an acre, and allowing people to live in this area. They're very nice flat lots, and the owners, as I say, really wish to stay in this area. Again, the housing diversity, the owners would like to build a variety of housing forms and would work with a contractor to come up with some different designs. The park that we proposed at the far end of the property is as shown on the plan, and if council prefers, we can certainly pursue cash in lieu, but right now we're certainly proposing parkland. So that's all I have to say. I appreciate the opportunity to present. Thank you very much, and look forward to council's deliberation.
Okay, thank you. And through to council, are there any questions for the applicant? Okay, seeing none, I will move on. So at this point, I will call for first-time persons registered remotely and in council chamber who believe that their interest in property is affected by proposed bylaws 317 and 318. Please wait for your name to be called, and when it is your turn, state your full name and civic address. Staff will proceed through the remote registrant list first, and then through the gallery registrant list. When it is your turn, staff will call your name, and you may give us your input regarding proposed bylaws. The proposed bylaws. You will have up to 3 minutes to speak. I will let speakers know when you have 30 seconds left and when your time is up. So through to staff, do we have anybody registered remotely? It doesn't appear that way. And at this point, we'll wait for Director Coates to start off the in-person registrant list.
We have 3 people who wish to speak for the first opportunity. The first speaker is Lance Gesselbrecht, followed by Joan Jones. Please queue at the back of the room so you're ready to proceed. And she will be followed by Susan Cormie.
And again, just name and address, and you'll have to press the button. It'll light up red. There you go. So name and address, please.
Lance Kesselbrock, 7365 Spence's Way. I'm speaking in support of the application. Again, I live in the immediate neighborhood. One thing I wanted to point out that's probably applicable to both applications tonight there on Harwood is that
Mr. Gesselbrecht, you'll have to limit your comments to this specific application, please.
Fine. I would hope the district would take the in lieu contribution rather than the parkland. The subject property is a 1 to 2 minute walk from the woodlot recreational area that many Lantzville people use as their recreational area, and probably another couple of minute walk into the foothills parkland area. So there's no shortage of parkland in that area and no shortage of areas to recreate. taking the in lieu contribution allows us to maintain other parkland areas in Lantzville.
And for the
Next
next
speaker
speaker,
is
again,
Joan
just
Jones.
name and address for the record, please.
My name is Joan Jones, 7255 Ellesmere Drive. Thank you. I'm speaking to number 6717 Harwood Drive. Today, the Times columnist ran a piece on the Langford Council. Their mayor, Steve Young, said, I quote, "I don't think we're going to have a meeting to make big decisions or any decisions in the last month before an election, and we've never done that. We've always stepped back from it and then let the decisions close to an election be made by the next council. It's always been that way. It should be that way in Lantzville, too." Most residents I've heard are supportive of development, but they are asking for it to be done with respect for the official community plan. Its mandates and its visions are needed to guide development as Lantzville grows. Earlier today, I read through about 60 letters of opposition to these Harwood developments. Unlike one speaker, I believe that there are important residents out there. Many of them were unable to attend tonight, but they took time, over 5 hours on the afternoon of July 9th, to submit their concerns. They were handwritten into the comments section of what has been referred to as form letters. These handwritten concerns I'd like to summarize. I'm quoting from the letters. "The site plan is uninteresting. Cookie cutter lots without imagination. I am writing once again to hopefully and truly be heard. The semi-rural character of this neighborhood will be lost if these estate residential buffer zones are developed. Please leave the large trees, no clear cutting. Keep the current zoning, which allow for 1 acre lots. We need these buffer zones. Council is ramming through unwanted and unwarranted development against the wishes of Lantzville residents. No planning rationale to support this. This is a fishing expedition. What a joke. Opposed due to the timing, many are on holiday. Some on this council ran stating they supported the OCP and are not being ethically or morally in keeping with what they stated.
Through to the speaker.
Very upsetting.
Ms.
Point
Jones,
of order.
Councillor Gusselberg, you're interrupting me. I will deal with your point of order in a moment. So through the speaker, if you can just direct your comments to the proposed bylaws, that would be appreciated, please. And through to
Yes.
direct.
Thank you.
just hold
I'm
on, Ms.
sorry all
Jones.
these residents didn't.
Ms. Jones, just wait, please.
Oh, sure.
Councillor Gusselberg, you called a point of order. Can you please state your point of order?
I agree with what the mayor said. Let's stick to the topic and stop the character
Okay, so
assassination
Councillor
here.
Gusselberg, there's no point of order with that, but it has been addressed. So
Thank
continue
you.
on, please.
Yes, absolutely. Further comments from the residents. Water must go to existing properties first. There's no affordable housing. The 300 increase in density is not a modest change and would cause significant increases in traffic and serious detrimental consequences to the local environment. Density being proposed is not sustainable. Residents need to be respected.
30 seconds.
Land and resources need to be protected. This is a final ask of council. If Langford Council can do the right thing, so can our Lantzville Council. Please defer this application until after the October elections and let the new council, elected by the democratic process, represent the will of its residents. Thank you.
Okay, through to Director Coates. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Susan Cormy.
And again, name and address for the record, please.
Thank you. Susan Cormy, 7130 Sebastian Road. I have sent a letter in opposing this application for a number of reasons, but one of the reasons I'm particularly concerned is how the on-street parking will be organized along Harwood Drive. A lot of people use the woodlot, and I know there's another application has come in which there's going to be 8 parking spaces for that use. But I think there'll probably be some overflow parking along there, and they'll go to Harwood Drive. I just want to know that if this application goes ahead, how will the on-street parking be handled? There's got to be a reason. You've got to ensure that it'll be intact. And lots of times in Lantzville, you'll see where people have narrow lots, but the whole lot is the driveway, across the whole lot, so there's no on-street parking. So I think that's a concern that should be considered as part of council's decision. Thank you.
Hi. On the form for second opportunity for speakers, we have Hans Larson.
Okay, so just, maybe I'll just pause, I'll just go through the rest of my script. Not seeing that anybody is registered, but just in case somebody does register remotely. So at this point, I will call for second-time persons registered remotely and in the council chamber who have new information to present and wish to speak again. If you wish to speak again via Zoom, please use the Zoom raise hand feature to indicate that you would like to speak. This function can be found in your webinar controls. If you're participating via telephone, the raise hand function can be activated by pressing *9 on your keypad. And if you are in the council chamber and wish to speak again, please sign the second speakers list, opportunity list for bylaws 317 and 318 located on the table at the entrance of the council chamber. So staff has the list through to the first speaker. Name and address for the record, please.
Yes, Hans Larson, 7010 Owen Road. Again, I'm going to offer my apologies for the typo in my written submission. Should have been 1.13 or 1 1/3 acres, not a third, and I'll come to that in my presentation. Mayor and Council, I'm speaking on behalf of my spouse and myself in opposition to the District of Lantzville OCP Amendment Bylaw number 317-2022 and Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 318-2022. We have several serious concerns with this development application. Based on the information that I've been able to ascertain regarding this proposal, my spouse and I are opposed to the OCP amendment and rezoning for this property in Upper Lantzville. Yet again, my feedback to the public information meeting, submitted a day before the July 22nd deadline, in which I highlighted a number of concerns in which the applicant said would be forwarded to the district, could not be found on the district's application web pages. Estate residential was designed to provide a transition buffer between residential zoning and rural zoning. This proposal doesn't provide that from east to west. It abuts the rural area, minimum size 5 acres, and the lot size in the proposal is an almost uniform 1/3 of an acre. Not much of a transition. That's very similar to the residential areas to the north and east. Page 78 of the OCP states that there's also potential for residential infill in key locations between existing neighborhoods in Upper Lantzville. This is not infill and certainly not key, and this property is not between existing neighborhoods. It also goes on to state there is community desire to avoid cookie cutter subdivisions. Unfortunately, this is the epitome of that. Under Goal 2, Preserve Community Character, OCP Section 5.2.7.3, Density Bonus, is explained in Part 2, Section 8 of the OCP. The district may apply a bonus density in residential areas outside special plan areas without amendment to the plan where the development plan includes parkland acceptable to the district in addition to the 5% dedication required under the Local Government Act and a community amenity contribution. For the 5th time now, an application doesn't meet this requirement of our official community plan for additional parkland, in addition to a community amenity contribution, in a density bonusing situation such as this, almost tripling the density from 5 to 14 units. While the applicants are proposing to provide some modest additional community amenity contributions, this does not negate the requirement for additional parkland under Section 5.2.7.3, since in this case they are providing actual parkland to fulfill the Local Government Act mandated 5%. This additional parkland could simply be added to that. I will hold the rest of my comments to my next opportunity.
That was good timing. That was your time. Any additional registered speakers? Okay. So I will call for a 3rd time for persons registered. Well, actually, we have nobody remotely at this point, so we'll skip that. If you're in the council chamber and wish to speak again or for a 3rd time, please sign the 3rd speaker's opportunity list for bylaws 317 and 318 located on the table at the entrance of the council chamber. So I'll allow for a few moments for that to occur. And before we call the next speaker, again, before I close this hearing, I ask if there's anyone else who is not registered remotely or in the council chamber that wishes to speak regarding bylaws 317 and 318. If you wish to speak, we ask that you register now. So at this point, I will call the next speaker to the podium.
Next speaker for the third opportunity is Hans Larson.
Hans Larson, 7010 Owen Road. By calculation, the applicants are requesting a density increase of 4.5 units per hectare. Under the 2005 OCP, this large an increase would not have been permitted. 2.5 was the maximum. But even if there were no limit, it would require the applicant provide 32% total parkland. And here you are again on a path to accept the minimum statutory requirement of only 5%. Why will you not protect or defend the community of Lantzville for their due for accepting increased density into their neighborhoods? If you did what our OCP requires on the same basis as the old official community plan, making the park at the west end 1.6 acres, and thereby also providing some of that lack of transition we're concerned about. As has been previously so succinctly stated in some other area official community plans, residents, through their participation in the planning and public hearing process, just like this, are the final arbiters of community values. Thank you for your careful consideration of our position on this important matter.
Again, calling for additional speakers to come to the podium at this time before I declare the public hearing closed. So if there's anybody in chambers that's wishing to speak again, this is your time. And just reminding everybody that after the close of this public hearing, council must not receive submissions from the public. Okay, seeing no one who wishes to speak, I declare this public hearing for District of Lantzville Official Community Plan Bylaw Number 150-2019 Amendments 6717 Harwood Drive Bylaw Number 317-2022 and District of Lantzville Zoning Bylaw Number 180-2020 Amendment 6717 Harwood Drive Bylaw Number 318-2022 closed. That concludes our public hearings for this evening. At this point, I am going to call for a 5-minute recess. Okay, I'm calling this meeting back to order. So if the gallery can just take their seats and stop talking, please. Okay, we're on to item 4 of our agenda, so under bylaws. So the first bylaw is bylaw number 279. And this is obviously subject to public hearing input. Is someone prepared to make that motion this evening? Okay, Councilor Wilson, go ahead.
The District of Lantzville Official Community Plan Bylaw number 150, 219, amendment in brackets Foothill Special Area Plan, Bylaw number 279, 2021, be given third reading.
And is there a seconder to that? Second by Councilor Proctor for discussion. So through to the mover, Councilor Wilson.
Nothing to add at this time.
Oh, and through to the seconder, Councilor Proctor.
I do have one quick question before we really get into the discussion. Through you to staff, perhaps this question would be best addressed by Director Limshu. Has the drainage for this subdivision been designed, and could you explain to us at which part of the process that happens?
Through the Mayor and Council, with respect to drainage, drainage is dealt with through our bylaw 175. That's our subdivision and development services bylaw. And so with respect to the portions that have been developed to date, as I mentioned in my presentation, there's been over 100 lots created. As the applicants submit their subdivision, make their subdivision applications, the subdivisions are reviewed for compliance with our bylaw with respect to not only drainage, but the provision of water, sewer, drainage, and roads.
So I think if you could tell me if my thinking's right here, I think that somebody applies for a subdivision, and when they have subdivision approval, then we ask them to pay for the engineering to justify the services and the drainage, and is that correct?
I'm sorry.
We wouldn't ask somebody to pay for how to engineer their drainage before we gave them subdivision approval because of the expense of that. Is that correct?
So at the time of subdivision, they're required to provide detailed engineering drawings as it applies to the proposed subdivision. With respect to the rezoning application, the applicants do have a sort of an overall concept with respect to how they're going to deal with the services for the site. In this case, it's a little bit different than the other applications in the sense that the development is currently underway. So between staff, the applicant, and their consulting engineers, we're quite familiar with the capacities of the system that's been put in place to date.
Oh, that's good. So you have a bit of a head start on it. It's, I mean, I'm not an engineer. I gave birth to 2 of them, and they've explained to me that the engineering plans are very expensive, that it's actually a percentage of the overall cost of the project. Is that correct?
Yes, when it comes to detailed design drawings, they do make up a cost for the overall project, and depending on the scale of the project, they can be quite costly.
So it makes sense to me that municipalities don't ask for that until after the developer knows at least that they've been granted the zoning.
I'm sorry, your mic is cutting in and out. I can barely understand.
So it makes sense to me that municipalities generally don't ask for that expensive reports until they've granted zoning to the developer.
No, generally speaking, you would not receive detailed engineered design drawings at this stage of the development process.
So we shouldn't expect that for any application that's brought forward to us.
No, it's very unusual to expect detailed design drawings, at a rezoning stage. Again, it depends on the scale. Typically those detailed designs are done at the subdivision stage, and they're a requirement under our bylaw.
And what would happen if, I don't know, Like one day you woke up and you made a big mistake and you let the subdivision go ahead without the proper engineering drawings. What would the legal ramifications of that be?
When you say let the subdivision go, you mean approve the subdivision?
Yeah, well, what would happen if for some reason, because I've heard people in this community accuse council of ignoring things and possibly letting things go and it won't be designed properly. What would happen if it
Okay,
wasn't designed properly?
So perhaps I should just provide a quick overview of the subdivision process. So when a property owner makes application for a subdivision, they provide us with a general layout of what they're proposing. So the number of lots, how big they are, where they're proposing the roads, and so forth. The district does an overall review and then provides comments back to the applicant, indicating what they need to address with respect to water, sewer, drainage, roads, provision of parks, etc. And we fall back on our subdivision development services bylaw, because within that bylaw, it clearly identifies that what the applicant is obligated to do, as well as provides design specifications with respect to the type of road, whether it's a rural road versus an urban road, and so forth. The onus is then on the applicant to go back, work with their consultants, provide detailed design drawings, which is reviewed by district staff and our consultants for approval prior to any construction works being completed. Once those detailed design drawings are approved, then the applicant is got the green light to move forward with the actual construction and the implementation or the installation of those services. And it's not until those services have been provided and each lot meets our specifications that they can come back and request final approval so that their subdivision plan can be registered with land titles. So,
Sounds like a very involved process.
It is a very involved process, and it's something that doesn't occur overnight.
A lot of expertise goes into it. Okay, thank you for clarifying that. I just am curious that no one in the community seems worried about the drainage design here, and they have about other subdivisions. So I just wanted to clarify the process. It is an enormous park, and I think it's beautiful. I've been up there many times. My family has. We mountain bike, we hike. I'm just wondering, how will the municipality maintain that park? Do we have the means currently to maintain a park of that size?
I'm just referring to the agenda package. Within the staff report that was presented to council on June 22nd, so page 62 of the agenda package, there's a subheading marked resources. And in that section, the staff indicated that the district will need to increase capacity as the development proceeds and the infrastructure and the assets are required. Public and private amenities will be detailed out in the phase development agreement. But the long and short of it is that staff recognizes, yes, that is identifying for council that some thought needs to be given with respect to resources in terms of it's one thing to get the amenities, it's another to maintain them in perpetuity.
It is interesting to me that this is the only big project that's come before us that we haven't asked for an economic analysis of, because there are economic implications to this project. That's the only questions I have now. Thank you.
Okay, at this point, I'll open it up to the rest of the council for first-time speakers. Okay, go ahead, Councillor Savage.
Yes, thank you. And just so you know, I'm having the same dilemma as Director Limshu with hearing. We're on electronic tonight, so that's fine. We'll work through it. But I've just got about 10 minutes of a few tweaks and positive things to mention, so I'll carry on and do it in sections, whatever the chair's preference is. So things to address, there's currently a trail running along the edge of the Northwest Ridge with lovely views. The proposed 3-meter wide park strip along the Northwest Ridge property line is not in places on the top of the ridge, but some of it, a good part, is on the slope below the ridge. It is unclear how usable this would be as a trail. At one point along this ridge is an extremely dangerous cliff right on the property boundary with a sheer drop-off. With no fencing, this would certainly require more than 3-meter trail width to safely pass by. And there will be other spots where the trail could match the geography. Another idea is to ensure there are occasional corridors to access to the Northwest Ridge Trail between the houses at the front of the ridge, so residents living in the neighborhood can walk the trail and enjoy the views. In other words, we want to avoid a solid wall of private properties all along that ridge you can't get through. Also important is houses should not sit at the front of the Northwest Ridge. This is problematic for 2 reasons. Number one is fire. There was previously a fire, one of the speakers referred to, which ignited the whole steep slope leading up the ridge of existing foothills houses. Therefore, anything at the top of this slope would have to contend with an enormous wall of flame. For that reason, the houses should be set back from the edge of the ridge. They could still enjoy the view, but would be set back from a tall firewall if it should ever happen on the slope. Reason number 2 is this: to set back houses from the ridge is Lantzville should be able to enjoy the green hills as its backdrop, rather than having a solid line of houses looming over the section of Lantzville below. It's aesthetically more pleasing, both during the day, at dusk, and in the evening, to have the upcoming houses set back. I'm not going to propose any amendments to ensure this, as the best process moving forward is cooperating with trust and helping each other, the district, the community, and the developer. Over the years, there will be many issues which arise over time, some predictable, some unforeseen. So with the Northwest Ridge, hopefully we can continue to work together to establish a satisfactory result with a usable, safe trail and houses agreeably situated. This will come up in the future when that phase is done. So another small issue I previously mentioned is to establish a green corridor which would connect the Northwest Ridge to the main part of the park to the south. The logical location is along the western border of the foothills. This benefits the residents who will be living there, as well as others. This is for 2 reasons. Number 1, to allow the new homeowners to walk through nature to the main bulk of the park to the south. And number 2, to maintain a wildlife corridor from the main bulk of the park north to the woodlot, then along Narston Creek right down to the ocean. It's really important we maintain these wildlife corridors in our community. Now, since the subject of fire has been broached, it's critical we do as much as possible to mitigate fire risk. I mentioned before all materials on home exteriors should be as fireproof as possible. Unfortunately, we're at the mercy of what's available in our building stores. So the system may work best if the foothills themselves create sensible guidelines for builders. It only makes sense. These will be their buyers that are at risk in these homes. Inflammable roofs should be mandatory, as our wildlife consultant advised, who did a full report on this. This alone solves 80% of the risk, and minimizing flammable materials on the siding should be encouraged depending on the building store supply. Fire break deciduous trees should be encouraged in landscaping. There should be escape routes via trail networks, no matter which direction the fire is coming from. And residents should be educated on these reports. I've seen videos of fires and it happens so fast. Preparation is the mother of successful handling of it. Where possible, more than one escape route on road networks should be planned. I've walked all through the foothills in summer drought, and the fire fuel on the ground is tinder dry. And with more and more upcoming visitors to the park, the chances of a fire mishap increase. Even something as simple as someone smoking a joint and an ember falls on the ground. I know that's a humorous example, but it can happen so innocuously, and the simplest act can cause it. Fire should be taken very seriously, as the world is full of examples of post-tragedy analysis, which often conclude that if simple preventative measures had been taken, the mishap could have been avoided. So I just say this not to come up with onerous regulations, but let's all together take this very seriously. And the low, non-intrusive, low to the ground night lighting so far is excellent up Harwood Road. It's hoped this low lighting is everywhere so residents can enjoy the night skies, and it's healthier for wildlife as well. A Foothills Committee should be created to study and advise on all the park plans throughout this land and work with the developer to integrate it into the development. This is intended to be helpful advice, full of good ideas to be used or not. There are areas where the park plan can be incorporated into the proposed villages and subdivisions so new residents can have the best relationship with the park as possible, with trails, viewpoints, and walking routes to the villages. The proposed villages have an opportunity to be full of character and unique, and when it comes time to create them, residents will certainly support them as being unique. And just a couple more things, please. One suggestion is to have some public water spigots where possible, so visitors and locals alike can get hydrated or splash some water on their face to cool off. I see there is a planned fountain at the parking lot, which is great. A small thing, but so often missed in commercial or public areas, like our lower village, for example, except at Huddlestone there. We've approved a construction route along the highway and up Ware Road for Foothills workers. This will keep the peace with current residents along Alds and Phillips roads who are now impacted by speeding work trucks. It's important to keep the goodwill towards the foothills. And last thing, there's lots of space in the foothills, so if some additional homes beyond the 814 units is desired, the district and community may have various projects in the future requiring land where something could be worked out beneficial to both parties. The whole key is this should be viewed as just the beginning of a long-term cooperative, trusting relationship. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. And that was literally 10 minutes on the dot. Through to the rest of the council. I have a few questions, and I'll just go into now. And in terms of speaking time, similar to last time, I am giving some latitude on speaking time, so that allows for questions through to staff and the responses and individual debate if we go there as well. So with respect to the traffic report, I did have some questions on that. So through to Director Limshu, one of the concerns I have is just about the potential of the second road accessing or leaving the development down the road, and that's the Vipond access. So the one question I have right away through to staff is with respect to communication between the RDN and the city of Nanaimo, has there been any significant discussions there on how this is going to work? Because the Vipond Road basically
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. I can't hear what you're saying.
Well, there's a problem with our audio here, so I don't know sign language. I don't know if you know sign language, so I think we're at a stalemate on that. You know, even if the applicant would, you know, maybe they can answer that. I don't know, but I don't know if that'd be improper. Okay.
And as a point of privilege, please.
Yes, state your point of privilege, Councillor.
Yeah, I could manage to hear you, so Director Limshu can hear me because I can hear him clear as a bell. So would you like me to pass on the question to him?
Not for the entire meeting, no.
No, just this one. He was just referring to Director Limshu, the road on Vipond.
Yeah, just hold on, Councillor Savage. Just through the staff, we have an obvious technical difficulty here. It's impeding the meeting. Is there any remedy to this at this time?
Maybe check your connections on your wires.
I've been wiggling them, and
get
apparently
your
it's for
mic right up to your mouth, and then see if you can hear you.
Yeah,
there.
it'll be in my mouth if I go any closer. So through to Director Limshu, can you hear Director Coates?
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Yeah, I will. All right. So again, my question has to do with access to the foothills through Vipond Road, and my question has to do with: has there been any discussions with the RDN or the city of Nanaimo about this potential access? And if there's any, and if have there been any concerns expressed to the district about this potential access?
I can't speak to whether or not there's been any direct discussions with either the city or the RDN with respect to Vipond, but there's certainly been discussions between the district staff and the applicant with respect to preserving Vipond Road as an emergency access, and so this is all being discussed as we work our way through the phase development agreement to ensure that there's a second access, from to and from the site.
Okay. Fair enough. And again, like even with the Vipond Road in the actual OCP amendment, I can appreciate the fact there's going to be a cycling route, there's going to be a trail created and so forth. So I'm really excited about that. I think it's a definite positive. My concern lies with, traffic exiting out of the foothills or entering into the foothills from basically the RDN and City of Nanaimo, because ultimately it would have to go up to Metro Drive. And obviously we know there's works that are underway on Metro Drive, and I don't know if they have planned for the potential exit of foothills traffic out into Nanaimo through basically Dumont out to Metro Drive. With this traffic study itself, one of the things I just wanted to kind of clear up is just with on page 3 of the traffic study, which should be found on page 36 of our agenda, it does speak to existing conditions. So my question, there's a footnote with respect to that, and the footnote has to do with so in relation to other local developments, and the footnote has to do with the Upper Ware Road development and the Clark Drive development. So I just wanted to make sure that, yes, in fact, the traffic study did take that into consideration, because there is a significant, development that will be going forward in that area. So is that clear? Like, or is that how we should understand it?
So the traffic study utilized information that was available to them at that point in time. I can't confirm whether or not they've included the two applications. I guess the three applications on Harwood that have been recently presented to council. But perhaps the consultant for the applicant can speak to that. But at this point, it was predicated on the base available information at that time, and that's how they ran their model. And where there wasn't evidence of new applications, it's predicated on what's within the existing official community plan and zoning for the area.
Sure, and there's obviously a recommendation that came out of the analysis, and it had to do, I can't find it here now in front of me, but constructing a better exit, I think. And I've lost it. But anyways, it seems like they have mitigated any of the additional traffic flow. But again, I just wanted to clarify that. I wasn't too sure. In terms of the application itself, really what it's asking for is an additional 84 units, and above and beyond what's already been approved. So, and I think that's why we don't have any real public opposition to this specific development. In fact, I think to its credit, what it's doing is it's this current application is kind of mitigating some of the, you call it urban sprawl if you want, by amalgamating all the parkland into one chunk and basically increasing the compactness of the proposed development. So that's definitely something I can get behind, because once this is constructed, just like with phase one, that is now turned over to Lantzville as Lantzville infrastructure. So, the less roads that are essentially constructed, the better it is. The less pipe in the road there is, the better it is for us as a community, as taxpayers. So I can really appreciate the fact that the new application, or this application, really is compacting the overall development. And again, it's adding 84 units. And also speaking in favor of this is it's honoring the MOU. The MOU is a pretty big deal, because even when I ran for council initially, this was one of the things that was brought to my attention on how we could potentially solve some of our water problems in Lantzville because of the financial contribution of what would come from the foothills. So to date, obviously, we haven't realized any of that, but moving forward, we will eventually realize that as we enter into this, as this will likely be approved, and we move into a phased development agreement. We can work out the timing of the transfer of funds and other things that will eventually help Lantzville residents in fixing their water issues. Or at least getting the pipe to neighborhoods so people can, end up paying their portion to fix their water issues. So I'll leave my remarks there at this time, and I'll let others speak. So through to the rest of the council. Councilor Wilson, go ahead.
I can support this development. I just echo your comments with respect to bringing the development where one thing that I look at in terms of having been on council here for 4 years is just looking and managing infrastructure costs. When I ran initially, I didn't realize how poorly we are set up as a municipality for managing our infrastructure costs, and we have a ton of aging infrastructure that needs to be fixed as well. And when you look at this particular development, what they've done in this new proposal, they're actually, like you said, Mayor Swain, condensing the development so that there's now less roads, less pipe in the ground, and ultimately increasing the units will also bring some more taxation to Lantzville. And when I look at taxes, and I for myself, when I analyze all of this, I don't so much look at, things like DCCs or, I look at amenity contributions, but to me, what's more important is the residual tax revenue that we get forever. And that goes up every year, typically. Just with inflation, you have to manage that. So I think for Lantzville, this proposal definitely benefits the community and gets, with the condensing and having less roads that would be needed and less pipe in the ground to manage the previous proposal. I think this is excellent and we should welcome this for Lantzville as a council body, in my opinion.
Okay, additional speakers. Okay, so Councillor Savage, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. First of all, I'm a little disappointed. You feel I'm inadequate as your interpreter, Mayor Swain, but that being said, the potential school site is going to be in Hecla Village. And also there's a land for a rec center in Hecla Village. This is a huge plus for Lantzville, having land for both a school and a rec center. Residents in the foothills would really enjoy a rec center, just like they do in Fairwinds. Their rec center is highly valued and popular in the Fairwinds golf course community there. So there are just so many good features in this development. One thing the developer might consider is greenhouses are a really nice, cheap public feature. They can serve as year-round community gardens and social gathering places. Outdoor community gardens too, for bouquet flowers and vegetables and so on. This would add another unique feature to the Hecla Village. And I don't know if I mentioned this before, but bears repeating. And in our community plan, it allows for FOG zones, which stand for future old growth zones. And this just means you set aside forests in the park, not to be touched, to create old growth forests. This would be the first in BC. Yet another unique feature to make the whole development more special than it already is. And on page 43, number 5, it reads, locate and design neighborhood centers and indoor-outdoor gathering spaces to maximize human comfort throughout the seasons. Example, consider orientation to views, sun angle, and prevailing winds. So you don't often see this. This just shows the care that this project is being done, and also the benefit of starting from scratch to consider such things. So that really should be pointed out, that they're going to that amount of care to really create a nice village setting at Hecla. And then there's a commercial quarry gathering place, and then also the Gateway Village. So and on page 35, number 22, it refers to targeting step 4 and step 5 energy code levels for some of the housing. This is terrific. And I should point out that the Vancouver Island University has just a top-notch construction training, and they're targeting advanced step codes. So they're going to be one of the leaders in BC for training advanced technology and construction techniques. A former executive with the Building Association of Vancouver Island is affiliated now with the Foothills, Carrie Ann Cody. And and she has a relationship with VIU as well. So I'm hoping this relationship grows between the two, so there can be training in the Foothills as well as hiring over the years from the Foothills to VIU. And the VIU students also have participation in the Dream House that was, they sold tickets for to benefit the Hospice Society in Nanaimo. So there's already a relationship there. So that's just one more adjunct of this development that's going to be a very good beneficial thing for the whole area. So a couple of questions, please, to Director Limshu. There are a number of these upcoming little small parks like the Upper Lookout, neighborhood parks, future village plazas, and so on, and strata parks as well. But now, could I just get explained what the relationship this will be with the district? Are these small upcoming parks? You can see little stars on the map as future possible parks. Will these be district parks where we'll be responsible for looking after them and so on? Or how exactly will this work, please?
The answer is yes to all of the above. Some of the parks will be handed over to the district as part of park education, while others will be in the private realm, which would require easements or SRWs, stat right-of-ways, to allow for public access to either for folks to make their way to a park, or perhaps there's a gathering place in that particular section of the development. So one of the things I should, we focus a lot on the rezoning part of it, and we had a bit of a discussion on the subdivision. But I think the other component that I should mention too is in between, the rezoning and the subdivision, there's also the development permit process. And so through the development permit process, that's when we get into, sort of the more detailed design with respect to the commercial centers, the multifamily units, not only how the buildings look and feel on the property, but how do they integrate into the overall neighborhoods as the developers, I'll call it, work their way up the hill, so to speak. So at each step or at each phase, we'll be working with the consultants and the developers to figure out the details of all these things. So there isn't one clear-cut answer to your question, Councillor Savage. It's basically an iterative process, and as we get to each section, we refine and fine tune the plans to make sure it meets the vision of the guidelines.
Oh yeah, no, that's great. That explains it. Thank you. And now listen, Director Limshu, you're not getting too dizzy and disoriented with all these parks, are you? It's quite the amount of green space, eh?
Yeah, so we're quite cognizant of the liability and the like, as I indicated in the report, the resources that will be required to manage and maintain these.
Oh yeah, well, most of us love it. Now, the second thing, please, is with roofs. In the literature from the Foothills, I don't have the page number and so on, but it referred to roofs as being fire retardant, I believe was the phrase. But my thinking, as you recall, we had a full report done through a grant of our North Vancouver consultant for wildfires. And certainly his recommendation was that roofs solve 80% of the problem and the risk, having them inflammable or non-flammable or completely fireproof. So can you speak to that, just how we would approach this in terms of ensuring that no roof built in the foothills could catch fire. And I'm just wondering the difference between a fire retardant roof and a completely inflammable roof, like a metal roof, or I'm not that well versed in the asphalt products out there or the shingle products that are fireproof, but could you speak to that? It's just so important to get this right for fire risk. Thank you.
Yeah, so the foothills properties are subject to a variety of development permits and development permit guidelines. There's the steep slope development permit area. There's also the fire interface development permit area. And so just for council's information, every parcel that's been created and that will be created moving forward are subject to the requirements under these development permit guidelines. And so with respect to the fire interface as an example, reports have been prepared by Foothills. There are development permits registered on title, not just for the large. It wouldn't be just for the commercial or the multifamily sites. It also involves the single family sites as well. And within those reports, it does talk about materials, recommended materials for not just roofing, but also for the exterior of the building, and recommendations with respect to site clearing and making sure that fuel is not within a certain distance of the residences and so forth. To your question as to the difference between fire retardant and fireproof, I can't say that I'm an expert in those kinds of materials. I would expect that fire retardant means that it will repel the heat for a certain time frame, whereas absolute fireproof means that the flames aren't going through the material.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, that's great. So anyway, the Foothills have been so cooperative. I think that if they could be encouraged to really think about this and use over the years with their building the most fireproof, fail-safe roofs they can, they certainly would, because this is protecting the residents they're selling to is the key.
Okay,
so,
Councillor Savage, I'm going to interrupt there. You've had the floor for quite some time now. If there's any additional speakers, I have a couple just real quick remarks, and then I don't know if there's any other members of council that wish to speak before calling the question. So at this point, I just wanted to, it's interesting on page 4 of the traffic study report. I'm not going to get into traffic, but there is a nice little summary around the proposed land use in table 1. So basically what it shows is that between single family housing, duplex housing, and multifamily housing, low rise, it's split equally. So for the single family housing, it's already got 102 units completed in phase 1 of the 271, but the rest, as again, like I said, is split equally to make up the 814 units. There's also a commercial component that summarizes the 5,000 square meters or the 54,000 square feet, which isn't a ton. Like if you actually combine that, you looked at that total commercial space, that's a large grocery store. So when you imagine the village and all the commercial space, as you put it together, it would be a large grocery store. I think there's a lot of exciting things. There's one comment I believe made around having a village up there. I think it makes perfect sense. I see the Foothills as becoming a bit of a recreation mecca for hikers, bikers, rock climbers, and who knows what else is going to happen up there. But I see it as a mecca, and I remember even going when I went to the information public information session, the discussion around, potentially seeing a pub up there and other amenities where there's a bike shop and other cool shops, I think lends itself quite nice to the area. So it makes sense. So I'm quite excited to see a village, but I don't see it as being a competing village with the downtown village core at all. I see it as just being something very special and unique to that area, as it's as a recreation hub. As to the future of the parkland, that's a big unknown. Obviously, It's going to require a lot of staffing to do that. It's probably going to be a regional effort. I look at Stanley Park as being 1,000 acres, and they have a whole parks board to manage that. And you should see the staff that they have, to deal with Stanley Park. Now, obviously it's a different terrain. There's no seawall. It's not flat. It's, the terrain is difficult. But again, it's 1,000 acres. Stanley Park has a parks board. So I think on that note, it's pretty obvious that we're going to need help regionally to deal with that. So unless there's any further speakers, I'm going to call the question. So go ahead, Councillor Gusselbrock.
Thank you. I know Mr. Oakland is taking copious notes back there of all these suggestions, and I'm sure the next council would be providing many more suggestions to him. I'll put my bid in now. How about a gondola right from the district office right up the Lone Tree? It works in Squamish. It should work here. Yes, it's a very good project. I was around when the previous owners were working diligently, and unfortunately there was a bankruptcy. They had a lot of good ideas. The bankruptcy was very difficult legally, and all credit to Mr. Oakleon and his staff and his investors for having faith in this project, because it could have gone sour very, very quickly. I'm glad Councillor Savage mentioned his fog zone. It's been logged 3 times up there, so maybe he can get provincial designation for the whole place as a fog zone, because they're all new trees basically. I like the concept. I like the way that it's been re-engineered, bringing the residential into tighter areas. There's a lot of land up there. And I like the parks. The park, 1,100 acres. My question, and it'll be a question the next council will be dealing with, I'm sure, right at the top of their strategic priorities, is how many more staff and resources will have to be dedicated to bringing this park up to what the residents are expecting, knowing that we have a new marine park that'll be competing for attention. But how many more outside workers will be needed to maintain drainage, maintain the roads, develop trails, put signage out there, create the accessibility that Councillor Savage talked about? That's a lot of work. How many, how much? What increase in taxes will that translate to? Fires, lots been mentioned about fires. Will the fire department need to purchase all-terrain vehicles to reach some of the remote areas? Do we have the equipment? I know when I was the chair of the Nanoose Fire Protection Committee, we had the fire department got the funding to put large tanks up on sea blush so that if there was a fire there was capacity, because engines only carry so much. Will that be something our fire department will have to consider, putting large storage tanks? Keeping in mind that the Foothills has done this community an amazing job of providing 2 reservoirs, 2 large brand new reservoirs with lots of capacity to supply in the future all of Lantzville with water. I think we underestimate how big an advantage that was to the community. Bylaw, police enforcement. Will there be homeless camps starting to propagate up there? Will they be coming in from Vipond Road? Will they be going straight up Ware Road? Will there be other illegal activities? Will we need to increase our bylaw enforcement staff? right now, I think the last time my brother and I walked up to Bald Mountain, we saw evidence of some real degradation of the trails by ATVs and motorcycles. Which roads will be used by motorized vehicles? Which will be only for hikers and mountain bikers, or only hikers? Who's going to put the signage? Who's going to enforce it? These are big questions, and they're going to require time, staff time, and money, lots of money. I can advise that if you're hoping for the RDN to jump on this and throw a ton of money at it, it's not in their plans at this point. The RDN works on 5, 10-year plans. I sit as the director from Lantzville at the RDN on the Parks and Trails Committee, and there's 8 other electoral areas and 3 municipalities besides us who are vying for Parks and Trails money. So yes, we should get started if that's going to be the will of council in the future to approach the RDN, but it's a long, long list, and there's only so much money, which is getting scarcer. Lots of liability issues that staff and council are going to have to deal with. We have rock climbing cliffs. People get killed on those. People fall off their mountain bikes and get seriously injured. Is our fire department prepared to have the equipment to rescue somebody that's gone off a cliff? And those are liability issues. Those are legal issues that will have to be dealt with. Just to conclude, I just have some question through to staff, to Director Limshew. I'm wondering, do you have any concerns specifically to, and I'll just name some of these, to increased RCMP costs once this development is completed and we go past 5,000 residents and a large increase in RCMP? Is there any concern by staff for administration and maintenance costs that will be increased because of this subdivision? Is there any concern over stormwater management? Or are you confident that Bylaw 175 will deal with that at the development permit stage? Are you any concern about setbacks for the various villages planned for up in the foothills? Setbacks from the road, for the buildings, height of the buildings. Do you have any direct concerns at this point with any of those items I've mentioned? Did you hear me?
Yes, I did. Sorry. I did hear all those questions.
Through Director Limshew, we can't hear you.
I'll leave those as rhetorical questions. We have staff here. I know they will deal with those, but since it's been raised in other forum, I thought I'd put it out there. And despite the fact that we don't have an economic analysis report, I am confident that this has been a successful venture here in Lantzville, phase 1, and that the rest of it will be as successful. Thank you.
Okay, any final comments? And if we can keep them brief, please. Councillor Savage.
Yes, thank you. And just to be clear, Council Gasselbrack, these fog zones, we're not referring to that guy that's smoking a joint and drops the ember to start a forest fire. So the last couple of things, please, is I have no problem accessing most of this park area. I've been to almost every part of it. And there are many trails and logging roads that already allow access. And of note, the woodlot had a good many trails and all created by residents. So I agree with the earlier public speaker who said that this should be a Lantzville park and not given to the RDM. We should give long and careful thought about everything to do with this park before we make any decisions about passing it on to the RDM. And even then, we should think long and hard about it. My inclination has always been to consider keeping it a Lantzville park to ensure our values and environmental standards permeate the park. And all the new 814 homes might want a say too. So everyone has enjoyed this parkland. I've been up there since the 80s walking there. I just have always enjoyed it. And many people have enjoyed it with zero maintenance. So nature is nature. In terms of asking for more amenities, I've always thought when someone has been more than fair, you say thank you rather than asking for more. So I wholeheartedly support this, and I'm with Mr. Porter, who mentioned earlier on behalf of the Foothills. From what I could hear of him, the indication was they've gone out of their way to work with and serve the community with what they've come up with. And do I ever agree with that? That's how it should be done. And they've done just a terrific job. And I believe that not only is the plan good, but what's going to happen in reality and how it evolves over the years is going to be even better. So I wholeheartedly support it. Thank you.
Okay, unless there's any additional speakers, I'm going to call the question. Okay, hearing or seeing none, I'm going to move to call in question. All those in favor and opposed. And there's a little bit of a lag, so I'm just going to clarify with Councillor Savage, in favor or opposed, if you can just state it.
I'm sorry, is that directed to me?
Yes, through to you, Councillor Savage. Are you in favor or opposed? If you can just state it.
In favor, please.
Okay, so that's carried unanimously. All right, so that takes us on to the next one, which is in relation to the Foothills again. So this is bylaw number 280.
Point of order, please.
What's your point of order?
I'm sorry, we're not at that yet. Apologize. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll just simply make the motion, move this along, that the District of Lantzville zoning bylaw number 180-2020, amendment Foothills Comprehensive Development Zone bylaw number 280-2021 be given third reading. Is there a seconder to this? Second by Councillor Gusselbrock. Discussion on the motion. Again, I'll keep it real brief. Based on previous comments made, I can definitely support moving this forward. Again, my only real concern was just around the traffic piece, but it's not really a big concern enough anyways. There were concerns raised around the whole park thing that's made me a bit nervous, but again, I don't think there's anything to really worry about in that regard. You know, as we heard from the applicant this evening, 2024 is when they're likely going to be breaking ground. So there's a lot of time between now and then to iron out the details and so forth. But again, I think this thing is looking good. And again, you know, they already had zoning approved for 730 units. This is really an ask for 84, so above and beyond. And like I said previously, the compactness of the new plan definitely is appealing. It's cutting out some urban sprawl, that's for sure. Through to the secondary, Councillor Gusberg, if you wish, and then I'll open up to the rest of council.
I think most of it has been said already tonight. Thank you.
And to the rest of the council. All right, here I see nothing. I'm going to move to call in the question. All those in favor Okay, and opposed, that looks like it carried unanimously. All right, so that takes us on to bylaw number 315, Councillor Savage.
Yes, thank you. I'll be declaring conflict, recusing myself from the meeting due to my proximity to the properties for both upcoming third readings. And with your permission, Mr. Chair, I'll be permanently leaving the meeting for the night.
Okay, so through to staff, noting the time is 8:58 and Councillor Savage is leaving the meeting. All right, so is someone prepared to make the motion
Just
for
a
bylaw?
point of privilege.
Yes.
I need 1 minute break. 5? Okay.
So we'll call for a 5-minute recess. So we'll reconvene at about 9:04. No, that's whatever. One 5 in front of us. Is someone prepared to make that motion? So Councillor Proctor, go ahead.
Bylaw number 315, that District of Lantzville Official Community Plan Bylaw number 150, 2019, Amendment 6701 Harwood Drive, Bylaw number 315, 2022, be given third reading.
And do we have a seconder to that? Second by Councillor Gusselbrook. Discussion on the motion, so through to the mover and then to the seconder.
I have a few questions. Director Limshu, I'm wondering if you can hear me. Can I direct questions towards you?
Yes, I can hear you.
Perfect. I remember during the OCP discussions, we did spend a length of time discussing the OCP, many meetings, and we went around the estate residential. I know you weren't there then. I know it was Kyle Young while we were discussing it, but we talked about changing the zoning on that estate residential, but we decided that there was no point in making the lot size smaller because without servicing, without water and sewer available, according to the island health regulations, you can't develop smaller than 2.5 acres. Do you have anything that you can add to that?
At this point in time, I can't add anything further to that discussion. I was not present at the time.
Okay, thank you. And now that these lots have services, it's certainly within their rights. And in fact, some of the owners of these estate residential properties wrote us during the OCP process and asked to have their land rezoned. And we told them that we weren't going to because it wasn't serviced and that they should apply for a zoning and OCP change after we adopt the OCP. They were told that would be the proper process. If I'm wondering, through you, Mayor, to Director Limshu, hooking these properties up to water, is that going to have any effect on the ability of us to get water to the winds one day?
It is my understanding, based on the analysis that our consultants have conducted with respect to this, that the answer to that would be no.
So these potential lots can hook up to water and there's no way that affects our ability to service other on-service lots?
That's correct.
When I know that some of the owners of the properties adjacent to Phase 3 sewer wanted to be included in Phase 3 sewer when it was happening, and they were told that that wasn't the proper process and that they should apply after to be hooked into Phase 3 sewer. So the Phase 3 sewer is all done, and all the homeowners that are hooked into it, like for instance in the Winchelseas, have their bill to pay for their share. When if this rezoning passes and these homes hook into Phase 3 sewer, is it going to affect what any of the people that are already hooked into Phase 3 sewer owe?
Yes, it will. Effectively, it'll reduce the cost to the folks that are currently paying into that Phase 3 sewer. And I guess there's a couple ways you can deal with that. One is you can just reduce the cost based on the number of lots that are added to the service area, or the folks can continue to pay the same rate. It's just that it's for a shorter period of time.
So it's of a benefit to the rest of the people on Phase 3 sewer?
It is.
And is it any detriment to the rest of us that have a sewer system in our houses to have more people hooked up to it? We have the capacity?
We have the capacity.
If we have more people hooked into the sewer, is it less per house to pay for the maintenance of the sewer?
I think theoretically the answer to that would be yes, because you've got more users, and as the main trunk is already in the ground.
So theoretically that would be the same for the water lines and power lines and all the other infrastructure that they hook into. since it already runs right past their property. Okay, that's all I have at this time. Thank you.
And through to the seconder, Councillor Gusbrook, do you have anything?
I'll reserve my comments. I'd like to hear the rest of council.
And from the rest of council, so Councillor Wilson, go ahead.
I agree that in Lantzville we have this nice rural lifestyle, and what we also have in Lantzville is an infrastructure and a tax problem. These lots currently have water, can apply for sewer. They're 1/3 acre lots, contiguous with their neighbors. We as a council, as a body, have made decisions to take on park. We just had a conversation tonight about a massive one. How does that get managed? I mean, I don't think as a council we should be saying no to land. But for example, if we don't actually look ahead here at this Piercewood Park that we're taking on, and we don't manage it, we don't send someone there to look after it, it's going to be blackberries real fast. It's not going to be a park for the community. That's just one example. In Lantzville, a 1% increase, and this is through mayor to staff, if I'm not mistaken, is a 1% increase approximately $25,000 in Lantzville? So what does one employee cost? Well, that's probably close to a 3 to 4% increase when you factor in government burden, workers' comp or WorkSafe, their pension benefits. That's a 4% increase. Who's paying for that? The one thing I can look back when we're in terms of my time here on council is it didn't feel good to give the tax increases. And I was shocked that that's what we had to impose on Lantzville residents. Some will say, oh, well, it's staffing costs. Well, I compare Lantzville to other municipalities and we're pretty low on the totem pole with respect to the staffing that we have. I think we have phenomenal staff. Our staff is taxed. Think about what else that park needs. And I'm just using Piercewood Park as an example. Probably it probably need one person to manage over an 8-acre park in Lantzville on the water. That's going to be one of the apples of Lantzville's eye. And we need probably almost one person just dedicated to that park. You have an opportunity here where we have water going to these properties. You have road going past these properties. And we get the properties on the grid already. So to help facilitate not imposing large tax increases on residents within Lantzville, I think this is an opportunity for our council to be responsible and look at this development and that it's, like I said, contiguous with the neighbors, a development that can ultimately help add to our tax base. Like I said before, I don't look at, the $3,000 per unit or the $20,000. I look at the residual tax base. That is something that you get forever, every year. So for me, this is something that I feel that we as a council need to support to properly look at how we manage our infrastructure going forward, how we can hopefully in the future not impose large tax increases on residents. So for that reason, I'll leave any further comments for later, but for that reason, I support this proposal.
Okay, so that just kind of leaves me. So we obviously had our public hearing tonight. We've heard from the public. There's been lots of written submissions on this particular item. I do share some of the concerns of some of the speakers this evening, as well as the written submissions. The one thing going through the whole OCP process, and it was about state residential specifically, is having that buffer. between existing neighborhoods and transitioning basically to the forest. So obviously this will erode that buffer. I don't disagree with that. I have spoken to this previously. In terms of this being basically not infill, I would agree with that. It's not infill. It's an extension of an existing neighborhood. One thing I will agree on is that it's great that is the same type of development as the existing neighborhood. I haven't heard a lot of opposition specifically from the neighborhood regarding the feel of the continuance of the 3rd-acre lots and so forth. Really no concerns in that regard. The one thing it's been mentioned is basically given the shape of the lots being a long rectangular lot, you basically have this drag strip of a road, Ald's Road, and then on either side, it really does limit how creative you can be with the lots that will eventually go in there. So it will be cookie cutter. That will be the challenge for the developer to essentially make those lots more appealing, and however they're going to do that. So, the continuance of the neighborhood looks good. And as that's going to help their sales and marketability and so forth. The one question I did have for staff has to do with the requirement for additional parkland for density bonusing. Director Limshu, if you can hear me, I'm wondering if you can speak to that, the requirement for additional parkland for density bonusing.
Yeah, it's my understanding since I've arrived at the District of Lantzville that we've, I've tried to maintain consistency with respect to how we apply our how we stay consistent with our community amenity contribution document. And in doing so, what I've done is I've reviewed how council and the district have applied that for previous applications. And then the principle of fairness, I've just continued to apply and interpret the document the same way that it was interpreted prior to me arriving to the district of Lantzville. And with respect to this application, I believe that the applicants and their team went through the same exercise in looking at what was approved for similar types of rezonings in other parts of the community. For example, on Dickinson Road and the Winley rezoning immediately adjacent to the Dickinson Road rezonings. And those applications were recently dealt with council within the last year or so. So when you look at the numbers in terms of amenity contributions, they're comparable in terms of amount of dollars being provided per lot. These proposed rezonings versus what was approved in the past.
Okay, thank you for that. The next thing just is, and I wasn't present for the meeting where we dealt with first and second reading and the whole motion of moving to a public hearing. But so I guess I am a little late to this. The one thing I would prefer to see is like that density gradient. So as you go down the street, the lot sizes do get bigger. I think it would lend better to still creating that buffer. I do like the idea of having the park at the end of the road. However, I would be somewhat in favor of getting rid of that park and taking the cash in lieu of, provided that there would be a density gradient. So again, progressing from 3rd-acre lots potentially to half-acre lots as you travel down that road. That's just a thought. The one concern also that was brought up was the on-street parking on Ald's Road. Just can staff comment with respect to what is likely going to be happening with on-street parking, or what the provision of on-street parking will be for visitors in the area? You're on mute.
My apologies. Yeah, there was an application that was dealt dealt with by council last week. Public hearing was held. Third reading was granted. As part of that rezoning application, the applicants are proposing to provide a more formal parking area at the end of Alts Road and Edmonds Way to the tune of eight stalls. With respect to Alts Road, at the time of subdivision, assuming that the bylaws are approved, when it comes time for the property owners to make application for subdivision, they will be required to meet the design standards for that road as per bylaw number 175. And so that bylaw actually stipulates the width of the pavement, the requirement for a sidewalk on one side or pathway on one side, and it also talks about drainage and so forth. So at the end of the day, in terms of on-street parking, it would probably look no different than the existing subdivisions surrounding the subject property.
Okay, thank you for that. And then the last thing I'll comment on is process. And we've heard this evening there's a lot of frustration around process and timelines of how quickly this application has moved along. The applicant has provided some insight into the timelines, and the timelines for the applicant submitting or making an application to the district and going through all the steps has been approximately 4 months. Whereas where it comes into the public eye and even for council's consideration, it shortens down to a 5-week window. So, I can understand the frustration of the community when it comes to this because, again, it does feel like short notice. Public hearing being in the summer months, that's concerning as well. It does bring upon its own challenges. Even for me being here this evening has been challenged because of my personal life and summer activities and sporting activities and so forth. But anyways, I'm here, and I'm pretty sure council probably wants to get to a vote on this. But I do understand, and I would echo the concerns of the community in opposition to this, simply because it feels like it is sprung upon you. And even as a member of this council, sometimes it feels sprung upon me. This is coming so quickly, and does it allow for adequate research time? I try to do my best, as I'm sure members of this council try to do the same, in doing research and so forth, in processing these. I think in the future, I think this is just something, to strive towards doing better in terms of how can we bring this information forward to the community faster, that something is happening, and to allow for the community to feel that they have the time to provide adequate input and so forth into these applications. On our district website under the business tab, and it's kind of feels like an odd place, but for it to be, that's where you find all our rezonings. So you have to basically go onto the District of Lantzville webpage, go to the business tab, and that's where you find a lot of the information that has to do with any of our rezonings, not the most obvious space or place. And then when the public hearing notices come out, there's a link in the notices that takes you right to that place. But again, it's not the most obvious place, I think, for residents to look. But here we are now tonight, with this in front of us. I do, like I said, on a previous application, I believe if we did go to an OCP revision or through the OCP revision process and we were to re-examine this area, now we have services that are in that area, and consider how much of a buffer or estate residential area we're dealing with there. I think the public would buy into the rezoning on this. I do believe that. And just having talked with a few residents up in that area, nobody is jumping up and down like, what are you doing? Putting in 30-acre lots. It seems to be very much in keeping. I think a lot of people are just upset with the process, and I can't blame them. I feel, again, it's maybe is a bit rushed, but here we are again. So I'm prepared to vote through the rest of council. If you have any additional comments or debate, let's hear it. So, Councillor Gusselbrecht.
Thank you, Mayor. One of our major strategic priorities when the five of us sat down here for almost 4 years ago was to provide water to all those areas of Lantzville that wanted it. Here we are. The water pipe runs by there, the sewer. We're doing what we said we would do at our very first strategic priority, and it's still one of our top strategic priorities. So I think it's a bit of a no-brainer. I'm not going to repeat what my fellow councilors have said. I think they've gone over it. I note that I counted some 57 letters that were sent in. I read each one of them. It was the statement was form, but you know, people did put their comments down, and I read those. I note, though, that of those 57 letters, 3 of them had no address on them, so I don't know where these people were. 40 of those letters were residents who either lived in Lower Lantzville or who lived on the periphery of Lantzville, Bayview, Lorenzen Lane, who would normally have no reason to come by this area unless they're mountain biking or hiking, in which case there will be 8 additional parking spaces which aren't there now. And, you know, I've seen the cars parked along Olds Road there, helter-skelter. It's a safety issue, but people got by. I mean, there wasn't any big problem, and I don't think there'll be a big problem in the future. So of those 57 letters, only 14 people, residents, actually lived in the immediate vicinity. Now, I may have this, hopefully I have this right, that the district sent out a notice within 60 meters, but the owners, the proponents, sent it out to everybody within 200 meters. And they had a public information hearing. So I don't see a lot of opposition from people who live around this development. Third of an acre parcels, this once again is within the OCP guidelines. Provide diversity of lot sizes to people who want to build. Now, the last point I'll make is that we heard that both of these owners have long-term residents. They want to be able to build another smaller house to downside. They have children. They want their children to be able to build there. And this is no different than our first settlers here in Lantzville, of which we have some folks whose great-grandparents were here. The difference is that they were subdividing 100-acre parcels. Here, it's smaller because there's more people and 100 and some years have gone by. But they're doing the same thing. You have the land, let's subdivide it, I can downsize, I want my kids to be able to get something, and I can actually make either income or some more capital to support me in my old age. So, no, I'm in favor. Thank you.
Okay, I'm just gonna ask for a motion to extend past 9. Oh, we don't actually need it, do we? Okay, my mistake. All right, so any additional speakers before I call the question? In terms, I just had a couple real brief comments. In terms of water to residents throughout Lantzville, yes, that has been a strategic priority. And for as far as I'm concerned, yeah, I do appreciate the fact that there will be $20,000 additional CACs provided, and it could go towards water. You know, it's for me, providing or the provision of water has always been about getting it to people that have quality or quantity issues. It wasn't always for development. I always recognize that, yes, water or increasing our water supply is going to lead to development, and I was okay with that, even with the foothills for that matter. But with respect to, you know, my concern is it's overdeveloping or moving too quickly. That has been a concern with respect to the provision of water. Other than that, I do recognize that the homeowners are longtime residents, and it is their hope that they're going to build new homes and share that opportunity with children, and I think that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. Again, I do feel that the biggest part of the opposition to this has been process. And I do think that's something that requires further examination. But in terms of where we're at with this, it's a difficult one to try and turn back. I do, again, and I'll restate that I believe if this went to an OCP revision, I think the majority of residents would be in support of this type of development in that area. I don't think it would be turned away. So Councillor Wilson has his hand up. And
just
then
one
move to
comment
calling
on
question.
parking, which was raised. On a third of an acre lot, I don't think we're going to have an issue with respect to people with their own vehicles parking on their property. I ride my bike. I run through Winchelsea quite often, and I'm not dodging cars on the road. Like, people are, for the most part, parking in their driveways. So, in fact, some people have. I'm amazed at how many cars they have on their front yard. So I don't really feel that parking is going to be an issue. But anyways, yeah, that's all.
Okay, at this point, I'm going to move to call in question. All those in favor and opposed, that's carried unanimously. All right, that takes us on to the next item, which is someone prepared to make that motion. So bylaw number 316. So Councillor Proctor, go ahead.
That the District of Lantzville zoning bylaw number 180, 2020, amendment for 6701 Harwood Drive, bylaw 316, 2022, be given third reading.
Okay, and seconded by Councillor Gesselbrecht. Discussion on the motion. So through to the mover and then to the seconder.
I don't have anything to add.
I think it's been said. Thank you.
All right, so again, we'll just move to call in the question. All those in favor and opposed, that's carried unanimously. Takes us on to the next item, which is bylaw number 317. Someone prepared to make the motion. Go ahead, Councillor Proctor.
That the District of Lantzville official community plan bylaw number 150, 2019, amendment for 6717 Harwood Drive, bylaw number 317, 2022, be given third reading.
And
sorry, point of privilege. Did we skip one? Oh,
No.
okay. No, we didn't. All right. Okay, I'm good.
And
just
that's
have,
seconded by Councillor Gesselbrecht. Discussion on this motion.
Frankly, this one is so similar to the one we just discussed that I don't have anything to add to the discussion.
And through to Councillor Gesselbrecht.
I agree.
And through the rest of the council, any further discussion on this?
No.
All right. Again, echoing some of my concerns on this or from previous application to this one. Again, I think it has simply to do with process, but I do believe that if it went to OCP revision and the community weighed in on this through that process, I do believe that area would likely be permitted to have again, in my opinion, it is sprawl, but it would be infill. We consider it infill development in that area, and it would probably be in keeping with the surrounding neighborhood, which is a third of an acre as is. The only thing I would have liked to have seen with this is the density gradient, again, as you travel down the road, moving from third acre to potentially half acre lots or larger. But as we're this far into the process and the majority of council has moved it along to this point, I guess I'm late to the game. So through to the rest of the council, unless there's anything further, I will move to calling the question. Okay, hearing or seeing none, all those in favor and opposed, that's carried unanimously. That takes us on to the next one. Someone prepared to make the motion on bylaw 318?
The District of Lantzville zoning bylaw number 180, 2020, amendment in bracket 6717 Harwood Drive, bylaw number 318, 2022, be given third reading.
And second by Councillor Gusselbrecht. Discussion on this one through to the mover. Nothing. And through to the seconder.
Nothing, thank you.
And through the rest of the council. All right, so I guess there's nothing, so I'll move to calling the question. All those in favor and opposed, that's carried unanimously. We're at the end of our agenda, so I declare the meeting adjourned.